at Lodge School. I want you to either go on many of the media houses or the Barbados Labour Party's page, and you will see the numbers of persons who went behind Charles Griffith to his nomination. Don't take my word for it, go and see. He had over 120 to 130 young and old people going to nominate him at Lodge School. And when you compare the other side, they had about 10 persons. And that is symptomatic of how the people feel across St. John. Gone are the days where you can neglect people and believe that they will vote for you. And Charles has proven his worth time and time again under the toughest of circumstances, but relentlessly he has committed to ensure that he is representing you and your interests. But this is a time, ladies and gentlemen, particularly in this eastern corridor of Barbados, you continue to face the ravages of the climate crisis, the ravages of freak storms and weather patterns that we have not been accustomed to as a nation. But over the years, we're seeing more and more frequently a change in the environment. And part of the Barbados Labour Party team, under the leadership of Prime Minister Mia Mottley, we have been blessed to have a man who was a Minister of Maritime Affairs and Blue Economy, not just articulating our interests in Barbados, but across CARICOM and the entire world and the entire United Nations system. And that is why we have to ensure that on January 19th, we not only re-elect Charles Griffith, but we do so across Barbados, because within the Labour Party there is a bosom and repertoire of talent who can represent your interests at the local, national, and international levels. And it therefore gives me great pleasure, ladies and gentlemen, the man who upset Frandell Short last election, the man who will continue to represent St. Michael's South with distinction, I bring to you none other than Mr. Kirk Humphrey.
St. Michael's South, show your support. Come out in your numbers, don't hesitate. Don't wait till too late. I want you to vote and put in your vote for Humphrey. Vote and put in your vote for Humphrey. Vote and put in your vote for Humphrey. You ain't school, I know you ain't dancing. Vote and put in your vote for Humphrey. Vote and put in your vote for Humphrey. Vote and put in your vote for Humphrey. You ain't school, I know you ain't dancing. So we voting for Humphrey all the time. I've been riding with Humphrey all the time. We working with Humphrey all the time. So I get money balls and firm my life. So we voting for Humphrey all the time. I've been riding with Humphrey all the time. We working with Humphrey.
Good night, good night, good night. To the good people of College Savannah, and all the good people of St. John, those down in Concept Bay, all within the hearing of my voice, good night. I came here tonight to say a few words on behalf of my friend, Charles Griffith. And to say to you who live in this constituency, that in Charles Griffith you have the best choice of the choices that are now before you. You would have seen his work over the last 3.5 years as a member of parliament, but you know the quality of the man on his work perhaps throughout his lifetime. Charles is the consummate community worker, devoted to the people of this constituency, devoted to the people of St. John, a good friend and ambassador for the parish of St. John. I must tell you that I met Charles when I was a lecturer at the University of the West Indies, and Charles was my student. And Charles was one of the most engaging students that I've ever had. And you don't always remember all your students, but it's very difficult to forget Charles Griffith. And I remember two things very clearly about Charles as a student. Charles would always talk about young people. And my class, the ones that he took, were both classes on social theory. And Charles would always talk about young people and the need for us to do more for young people in this country from a grassroots kind of perspective. And engaging in a way that said to me there is something very special about this man, Charles Griffith. The other thing that Charles spoke of consistently was the parish of St. John. And that everything in theory or in social policy was related to St. John in a way that said to me, this man has a genuine interest in developing out his community. And I saw Charles as a student, and then even as a community worker because he worked in community service at the time, being a most dedicated person to the work of uplifting young people, not only in St. John, truthfully, but all over Barbados, but with a specific and peculiar interest in St. John. And therefore, it didn't surprise me that a few years later that Charles and I would find ourselves on the same political ticket with the same interest in developing people from a community level and having the same underpinning fundamental political philosophy that people matter. And I came to St. John to support Charles because of that underpinning philosophy that guides him, that people are and must be at the core of our development programming and the core of our development plans. However, there are some, notwithstanding the great work that Charles has done, that could drive on a bus that didn't have a bus before, stand on a paved road that wasn't paved before, have access to water when there was no water before, and say that Charles has done nothing. But as a student of theory, Charles would understand when I say to him that it is written many times in theory books, that there are none so blind as those who would refuse to see. And that politics sometimes can bring out the worst in us. I say so all the time in my community in St. Michael South. That politics sometimes can bring out the worst in us. I have no qualms coming to St. John. As a matter of fact, I must tell you that my mother was born in St. John. My mother is originally from Cherry Grove and went to school at Mount Tabor. And that therefore, in a way, this is a familiar breeze to me, somewhere embedded in my DNA. But I say to you that the people of St. John must appreciate that Charles has done a lot of fundamental work, and that there are none sometimes as blind as those who refuse to see. But I have friends who are from this constituency, many of them strong supporters of the other side, and still my friends, because I believe that we must rise above partisan political interests in the interests of our country, in much the same way that Charles does. But I have many friends who tell me that they're Dems and they're not going to vote for Charles, but that the young man has done tremendous work. And that, my friends, is the reflection of the truth. Even if you choose not to support Charles, that's fine. But do not try to associate it by suggesting that he hasn't done tremendous work. In 3.5 years, Charles has done the kind of work that would make the great Errol Barrow proud about this constituency of St. John. That is a fact. And I come here and I support Charles because, you know, the biblical version of that is really not so kind, of those who refuse to hear and those who refuse to see. And the guy who is now parading around this constituency hoping to represent the people has come here and said that Charles has done nothing for no one in the 3.5 years. Now, you must know better than that. You must know that Charles has done tremendous work, even if you choose not to associate with him. But do not try to lift yourself up by pulling Charles Griffith down. Because the evidence of what Charles has done is way too clear and it is too abundant. And Charles comes to me almost every day as a minister and asks me about things related to this community and related to this constituency. Charles cares. And when he says St. John is rising, it is not that St. John is rising through some act of nature or climate change, but that St. John is rising through the actions of Charles Griffith. And that there are many in this constituency whom I want to thank for associating themselves with the great work that Charles Griffith is doing. And Charles has not only done good work as a member of parliament for this area, but Charles has done significant work as a minister responsible for important things in this country. As the minister now dealing primarily with water, making sure that people have water not only here, because people often forget that a minister's job is not only to satisfy his community, but to satisfy all across Barbados in the respective field. And Charles has been able to do tremendous work in bringing water relief to many persons across Barbados. And beyond bringing water relief, it is also about being able to plan, because when we say that climate change is real, when we tell you that you can anticipate longer droughts in some cases and more flooding in some cases, it is real. And when the rain falls at that intensity and that frequency, we don't get necessarily more water in our reservoirs. A lot of it just runs off into the sea. And that we must be able to plan for it so that people of St. John can also have access to water. But Charles comes to me often in my capacity as minister responsible for maritime affairs and blue economy. And the person who is running for the Democratic Labour Party against Charles in this community, all of a sudden he cares about fishermen. All of a sudden he cares about the blue economy. But were you to check his record, whether you check his record of him in the Senate, or if you check his record in public speakings and mumblings, never are you going to be able to find anything of substance or anything at all, really, in relation to the fisherfolk in this community. You are not going to find a single conversation on the blue economy. You are not going to find a single conversation on climate change. Not a single conversation. But all of a sudden, because he is now hoping to be member of parliament, he now cares about the people for whom he had 10 years in the Senate to show some concern and showed absolutely none. But Charles Griffith, your MP, comes to me as minister responsible for maritime affairs and blue economy. And Charles has seen the work that we have already started across Barbados, uplifting fish markets, uplifting fishing areas. You know, as well as the most of Barbados, that we've done fishing markets starting all over Barbados. We've come across the east, all through the south, through the city, all across the northwest, into the north coast, making sure that we uplift and upgrade the fish markets and the fishing communities all across Barbados. Well, not too far from here, there is Concept Bay. And Concept Bay is a very important fishing community in Barbados, one of the oldest. And it would be a sin and a shame for me to say that as Minister of Maritime Affairs and Blue Economy, we had no plans for Concept Bay. And that Charles Griffith, as Member of Parliament, had no plans for Concept Bay. It would be a sin, but more importantly, it would be an untruth. And that the guy who is running against Charles must tell you what he did for Concept Bay for the 10 years that he was in the Senate. Where is the conversation on the upgrade of the fishing facilities? Where is the conversation on the upgrade of the market? Where is the conversation on the upgrade of the boating facilities? When you find it, bring it to me. Let me see it, because I would love to have it. Because you cannot fake concern. I know that that which is inside a man will eventually come out, and that you can only fake for so long, and that what is inside him will eventually come out, which is uncaring, lack of concern for your interests. But Charles, who has a track record of caring, who has a track record of caring about young people, who has a track record of doing significant work in St. John, will make sure that what is necessary down at Concept Bay will happen. And what are we doing at Concept Bay? At Concept Bay, we will upgrade the fishing market that is currently there. As a matter of fact, there is a cabinet paper that is finished. I'm awaiting the comments from the Ministry of Finance, funds that were already approved, for us to be able to upgrade the entire fishing market at Concept Bay. And in so doing, what do we achieve? We are able to make sure that the countertops are now up to phytosanitary standards. That means that instead of having bacteria along the counters, you now have proper counters that could be proud of anywhere in the world. We are going to make sure that we have proper facilities for the storing of fish. There are none there now at the moment. So we're going to upgrade that too. We also wanted to be able to upgrade the electrical facilities in there, but the Light and Power has told us, and these are the important things, you must ask Andre Worrell what he did when he was in the Senate. The Light and Power has told us that the current now, the wires and the poles and so on, leading down to Concept Bay cannot hold the upgrade that we wish to bring. So we now have to engage them to be able to change the wiring so that we can modernize that facility. That is one. The second thing that we are doing is improving the slipway. It's going to cost us to improve that slipway nearly $2 million alone. Those funds have already been approved. So there's going to be a brand new slipway here in Concept Bay. As a matter of fact, for a long time, this was the only slipway available. We are going to upgrade it. And thirdly, the fishermen's quarters that are now pretty much non-existent are also going to be upgraded. So we're going to be installing modern facilities for the fishermen so that everybody who is enjoying themselves down at Concept Bay will be able to do so in a place that is phytosanitary, above phytosanitary standard, that is clean, that is modern, and that is something that the people of St. John can feel proud about. But that is not all. Charles came to me, and Charles said to me, Kurt Humphrey, I need more down at Concept Bay. And that Concept Bay must become like a hype and a haven of activity in much the same way that we have at Oysins. So we're also going to be installing down in Concept Bay so people can enjoy themselves, all kinds of kiosks, so that local people in this community can go down there, manage a kiosk, and generate revenue for themselves and for their families. Those are the kind of developmental things that we are going to be doing in the ministry in St. John with the Member of Parliament, Charles Griffith, who cares about the people of this community. So don't let anybody fool you. Do not let anybody fool you. Because you had in this constituency the person who is now seeking to represent you in the Senate. And I've said to you that that which is inside a man must eventually come out. And that which is inside Andrea Worrell, you've already seen. Lack of concern for your interests. That which is inside Charles Griffith, you have already seen. A primacy of concern for your interests. And I am thankful this evening to the Prime Minister of Barbados because all that I have done in upgrading all of these fish markets, all that we will do to be able to upgrade the fish market down at Concept Bay has been done not only with her blessing, but with her pushing me all along the way saying, Kurt, we must make sure we make a better deal in this country for the fishing community. So I want to thank Prime Minister Motley for her heart, for her love, and for her concern. So that is, ladies and gentlemen, a lot of what we are seeking to do for you in this community. So this election is way too important to be allowed to be filled on nostalgia. This election is about your future. It is about your children's future. It is about electing a man who cares about you, who has devoted his life to ensuring that your children have a better way in this country. It is about a government and a party that is committed to the young people of this country. Well, it was our government that made sure your children up here could go back to university for free. It was the leader of the other side who said it was a wise decision to make your children pay. You must not forget. It is a contrast between a government that cares and a government and an opposition seeking to be a government that does not care. It is a contrast between an MP who cares about you and one who does not care about you from his own actions for the last 10 years. It is about having a leader like Mia Motley who will put her heart on the line every time for you, as opposed to those who are now fighting for leadership in the Democratic Labour Party. This election, my friends, is too important. So come January 19th, the choice, as I see it, and I hope as you see it, is clear. The choice for development is clear. The choice for the people of College Savannah is clear. That choice is to choose the Barbados Labour Party. Your choice is to choose Charles Griffith as your Member of Parliament, as you so rightly did before. Your choice is to choose Mia Motley to lead this country through very difficult times. And we promise you, those in College Savannah, that your interest is our interest and better times are ahead. Good night. God bless. Have a wonderful day. Thank you very much.
You ain't school, ain't the way you ain't dancing. Up and then your vote for Humphrey. Up and then your vote for Humphrey. Up and then your vote for Humphrey. You ain't school, ain't the way you ain't dancing. We voted for Humphrey all the time. I've been riding with Humphrey all the time. We working with Humphrey all the time. So I get money balls and farm my life. We voted for Humphrey all the time. I've been riding with Humphrey all the time. We working with Humphrey all the time. So I get money balls and farm my life. Trust the process, bigger progress. Helping poor people and me notice. People greatness, it ain't no less.
Thank you very much, Kurt Humphrey. You know, not only were the roads part of the things that Charles brought to St. John, but look at the bus. Do you remember when in this constituency and across Barbados we suffered perilously for buses? And we in the Labour Party, upon assuming office, made sure that it was a priority for all of us to have as a service a good functioning bus system. That is the sort of leadership that we have experienced over the last 3.5 years. But I want to go further. This is an election about comparisons. And you have seen time after time after time over the last 3.5 years the sort of representation that Charles Griffith has brought to St. John. But I want to remind you, because we have a situation where Andre Worrell and the Democratic Labour Party, they're telling you that he should be elected. And I am saying to you, no. Do you remember when Andre Worrell was a senator in this country? He had the air of the Prime Minister. He had the air of the Minister of Finance. He had the air of the Minister of Public Transport and Works. He had the air of the entire cabinet when the Democratic Labour Party was in office. And not one single time, not once, did he see it fit on behalf of the residents of St. John to articulate their plight and their concerns. But now he is coming to tell you that you should elect him. I say to you, no, we are going with Charles. It is very, very, very clear. I remember last week we had a meeting in Sherburne. And for those of you online who are not familiar with the terrain and the locale of St. John, Sherburne is where Andre Worrell is from. And the people there in their droves came out to support Charles. And they remarked that when Andre Worrell was a senator, he hardly spoke to the residents that he grew up with. But yet, he continues to spread lies that Charles is unapproachable. That is far from the truth. But this election is not only about comparisons of candidates, but comparisons of philosophy. We have a situation where if you read our manifesto, the Barbados Labour Party's manifesto, I've said it night after night after night over the last week and a half. Education in this country is very important, as you know. Hear, hear. Education is very important, as you know. And we have a situation where the Barbados Labour Party is saying to you that education must not only be about the certification and qualification of our people, but it is part and parcel of a revolution that you can allow our citizens to transform themselves and uplift themselves to move beyond the next level. And therefore, our people must now be at the forefront of development in ensuring that this country can move to the next level. And therefore, there must be and will be a realignment of our priorities matched by what our people can do. Our young people, and every person in this country, young or old, God has given them a talent. And our educational system must be a conduit that facilitates that talent to grow and grow and grow. And therefore, your ideas must be able to come to market, backed by intellectual property, and be able to export anywhere around the world. That is the sort of educational system that we are looking to develop even further. But I know Charles and I, we've had conversation after conversation, and you've heard the Prime Minister say it time and again, the new Barbadian, the Barbadian of the present and the future, must be one who is bilingual and can function anywhere in the world. And therefore, our educational system must facilitate that even more. I always give the example, when you watch football, whether it is Manchester United, Inter Milan, Juventus, in the post-match interviews, those persons can speak a foreign language. And therefore, languages must not be seen something that you drop in third or fourth form only, but it is something that every Barbadian now has to take up and move forward and make you more competitive. So therefore, when you leave Grantley Adams Airport and you go abroad for a job, or you want to start a business, you can land in Paris and say, Bonjour, je m'appelle Chad. You can go to Berlin and say, Ich spreche Deutsch. You can go to Spain and say, Yo hablo español. And that is the sort of leadership that the Labour Party, of which Charles is a part, led by Prime Minister Mia Mottley, is looking to do once re-elected in this country. There's simply too much at stake for us to turn back. And we have seen that over the last 3.5 years, leadership. But at this time, ladies and gentlemen, I want to present to you our leader who continues not only to lead in Barbados, our leader who only not continues to prove herself time and time after again as someone who can take your interests and package them together and put tangible visions on your behalf. Someone who is respected across the entire Caribbean. Someone I can tell you who is respected in the international arena, whether it be the multilateral system, bilaterally. Someone who is at the forefront of the global trade and development agenda. Someone who understands the plight of ordinary Barbadians. Someone who says, give me the vote and watch me, and she was able to prove it every single time. Someone who on January 19th, with God's help, will be your Prime Minister. Someone who will take Barbados to the next highest level with the support of all of us across this country. Someone who understands that what it means to successfully defend the interests of a nation. Someone who over the last 3.5 years, God saw it fit to place her at the helm of the country. He knew that there would have been a COVID. He knew that there would have been volcanic ash. He knew that there would have been trial after trial after trial. But God, in his infinite wisdom, in 2018, said to Barbados that we are going to have Mia Amor Mortley as our leader. And on January 19, 2022, ladies and gentlemen, with your help, we are going to re-elect Mia Mortley as the leader of Barbados. Ladies and gentlemen, Prime Minister Mia Mortley.
It's the only choice for we on call. We want Mia for sure in this election. Mia is the champion, say on call. We want Mia for sure in this election. Mia is the champion, so come. Hands up, let we keep on voting. Mia is the one for win. Hands up, let we keep on voting with Mia and the BLP. Hands up, let we keep on voting. Mia is the one for win. Hands up, let we keep on voting with Mia and the BLP. My sweet Barbados, we greater. With Mia Mortley, we safer. My sweet Barbados, we greater. With Mia Mortley, we safer.
Good night, good night, good night. Good night to the people of College Savannah and surrounding districts. The voice is weak tonight, but the spirit is strong. And I have come here tonight with a very simple message that leadership matters. And I want you, the people of St. John in particular, to help me work through this particular set of circumstances. Because never before in our country have we had a major political party come in to offer itself to the electorate, asking for your confidence, but refusing to tell you who will be its leader come Thursday morning. It's a very simple thing. And I haven't come for a lot of long talk, but I have come to ask you to start thinking and to start noticing. We ask our children to learn to become discerning. We pray for discernment, each and every one of us. And as we do that, I ask you to be discerning. For over 2 weeks now, the Democratic Labour Party has mounted platforms across this country. And on every occasion that Richard Seeley or David Eswick or Michael Lashley or any of them seek to speak about Verla de Pisa, not once have they told you that she could be and should be the next Prime Minister of Barbados. Not once. They tell you, even up to last night, when they mount a platform to launch a manifesto, that this is the president of the Democratic Labour Party. Now, what foolishness are you hearing? The only president that we know about nationally is the one that was just sworn in for the Parliamentary Republic. But yet, they come night after night after night telling you that Verla is president of the Democratic Labour Party. I want the people of St. John to bear with me, because in 1961, I wasn't born yet, but my father and others have told me the story. The Democratic Labour Party started the campaign with Theodore Branca as its leader. He was the MP, ironically, for St. Lucie. And when they realized that he was not appealing to the country, in the middle of the campaign, the slogan changed from vote BLP to borrow for premier. At the very least, they knew then that they would put a different proposition to the people of this country, and the people of the country bought the proposition. But this time round, we have a party that is hiding, daggers and knives hiding, until they can be drawn on the night of January 19th. Not even for Prime Minister, because they really don't believe they are winning an election. They are seeking, as I told you a week ago, to settle a battle in George Street, while you are voting for a government for Bay Street. And that is what is so diabolical, that at the very time when Barbados needs more than ever clear, strong, decisive leadership, leadership in the pandemic, leadership to deal with the climate crisis globally, leadership to negotiate with the International Monetary Fund, leadership to get the best deal with respect to concessional funding that we need to help bridge the gap, to create jobs for you, so that Kirk Humphrey can do the work at Concept Bay that you just heard him speak about. Leadership that allowed Charles Griffith and Dale Marshall to look at the people of St. John and St. Joseph and give them water for Christmas for the first time in many, 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 many years, because of what we did at Vineyard and at Mount Pleasant and carrying the water to Golden Ridge. Easing the pressure, making the clear decisions as to what is a priority and what is not a priority in this country. And instead, what you have masquerading for leadership is a person who is under threat day by day by day. And as if that were not enough, Verla has the temerity to come today and tell you that what Frondel Stewart said was perfectly okay when he described that decade as a glorious decade. Glorious for who? Not for the people of St. John. Not for the people of St. Joseph who couldn't get water. Not for those of you whose cars continue to have the shocks mash up. That is the kind of contempt that the Democratic Labour Party is showing you, the people of this country. And I've come here tonight, therefore, with a very, very simple message. One that you know, because if you're playing cricket on a field, leadership matters there too. And if you're playing football, leadership matters there too. And if you're in a church, leadership matters there too. And can you imagine that in an election, you cannot get a clear statement from her own colleagues that she is their leader, that she is supposed to be the person elected, whether as prime minister or leader of the opposition. Not a word. In the Barbados Labour Party, you know who is leading. And come win or lose, you know who will lead the Barbados Labour Party Thursday morning. But what you don't have is a clear statement, because at no stage is this about you. This is about settling battles in George Street. And it is amazing that today they tried to do something, bringing Verla and Richard Seeley together in the same space. And could you imagine that even then Richard Seeley refers to her as Madam President? But he's not talking about Dame Sandra Mason. He's talking about Verla de Pisa. He's talking about a woman who wants to be prime minister or who wants to lead the opposition if she could happen to beat Peter Phillips, which she may not. Different story. But they believe that they can trifle with her. And we saw the same division with Clyde Maskell. You remember? Where they continued to refer to Clyde Maskell as president. I say to you that Barbados' future lies in your hands. The future of you in St. John lies in your hands. You have had a man from among you. He has worked tirelessly to make the case for all of your issues in St. John. And while we have done a hell of a lot, he is still not finished yet. I saw others post on Facebook today, phase 1 of Pothouse Road, making the point that they had never seen that so smooth in all of their life. I know that it is not yet finished. I went there myself this week, and I gave the residents the assurance that it will be completed in good order. I know that we are in the process of delivering conveyances to the people in Welch who have never yet been able to go to the bank and borrow money on their property to be able to fix up the houses. Charles Griffith has made a difference to those people's lives in Welch. In many instances, the surveying has been completed, and it is just a case of completing now the conveyance. I have already spoken to you about the water, but Charles will tell you about the many, many, many other roads. My friends, the journey has only now started. And I'm saying to you that if we want to continue this journey, and if we want to see your children have opportunity, and if we want your children to be able to go to the university free of cost again, then it is under Charles Griffith and the Barbados Labour Party that will continue to happen. We have plans even for Codrington College to work with the Codrington Trust, because as I said to you, we believe we can bring greater economic activity here. But that requires leadership. It requires decisive and clear leadership. And it requires leadership that will go to the international community and carve out the space that we need to be able to do the things in this country. So when Wednesday morning comes, I ask you to study on these things and to make up in your mind to vote for Charles Griffith and the Barbados Labour Party. I ask you to give me, as your Prime Minister, a chance to continue the transformation of this nation. Because I know that we have only now started. We have had challenges, yes we have, with COVID. We have had challenges with the ashfall. We've had challenges with the hurricane. But deep down we know that this country has less than 12 to 13 years to adapt itself, to make sure that these roofs out here that are exposed to the elements and the winds can be secured and tied down, so that when a high wind comes or a hurricane comes, you don't lose everything in your house. And God forbid you don't lose your life in these new climate conditions. I ask you to recognize that Charles Griffith is the route to being able to make that difference in your lives. And when you compare this serious man to a man, I shouldn't say that, to a boy that Verla has sent, who can be described as simply an errand boy being rewarded for his loyalty to Verla in the fight against George Pilgrim 2 years ago. How do you take the most valuable seat in the Democratic Labour Party and give it to someone who has not done a single thing to distinguish himself either in St. John or either in the Democratic Labour Party? He is there to be Verla's protector in the assaults that come against her in George Street. And that is why I tell you, it is not about you. This is the Democratic Labour Party that gave you Errol Walton Barrow. This is the Democratic Labour Party that gave you David John Howard Thompson. And you mean to tell you that they're going to come now with Andre Worrell? Give me a chance, no man. Give me a chance. And that is why I say that in Charles, you have found a man that has worked every level up through the community, up through the country, and has come back and has actually delivered for you, the people of St. John. You must forgive me one personal moment here tonight. I can never come in to College Savannah without thinking of my very dear, dear friend who has left us. And I refer to no one other than Angela Watson. And this is the point that I want to make. There was no stronger, more devoted Democratic Labour Party supporter than Angela Watson. But the type of patriot that Angela Watson was that when we faced, Dale, our biggest problems with Trinidad and Tobago and the maritime delimitation and the fishing rights issue, Angela Watson did not see red or blue. Angela Watson saw blue, yellow, and black. Angela Watson and Rogie, God bless you, Rogie, I hope you're listening tonight, came with me to London. And for 3 weeks, we worked day in and day out to put a case for the people of this country, such that after that case, we won and got 98% of what Bree St. John and the others had been arguing for 30 years. That is the kind of Barbados I want us to return to, where when it comes to matters of national significance, there is no division. Where when it comes to us dealing with the outside world, there is no division. Because that is how we move Barbados forward, upward, and onward. And I ask those who are here tonight to spare a thought and a prayer and to remember her for the excellent work that she did, not just for the country, but indeed for this community and the families in here, and for all of the fisher folk in Barbados. So, my friends, tonight is a process that I hope you will continue over the next few days. A discussion that you will have tomorrow when you go and buy pudding and sauce and when you're drinking on the side of the road. A discussion that you will have when you come out of church Sunday morning, or if you're a 7-day, tomorrow. That what is it that Barbados needs now more than ever? Barbados needs leadership lining up behind a unified Barbados in a unified team. And unfortunately, the Democratic Labour Party is still in George Street trying to work out the issues. I said last night, and I meant it, if you cannot even get a manifesto right, if you cannot even keep a manifesto safe, how are you going to get the problems in Barbados fixed? And how are you going to keep Barbados safe? I know how the Barbados Labour Party can do it. And I ask you, the people of St. John, I've already told you that I have a nice piece of land down the road. I will soon be a constituent of St. John. Charles, I can't do it this election, but at some point in the future, I hope to vote for you as a registered elector of the parish of St. John. But until I get there, I ask those here to renew their faith in you. Come Wednesday morning, Charles Griffith and the Barbados Labour Party. Charles, come on up, because I want people to know that this young man is a man that I have worked with for over 25 years. When we started the Barbados Youth Program, the Youth Development Program, Charles Griffith was one of the leaders in it. And I watched him go from strength to strength. I saw him then, even while working in that youth department, go to the University of the West Indies, equip himself with the skills that he knew he would need if he wanted to offer you representation. But above all else, he has never lost the common touch with young people. And that is why across the parish of St. John, young people are saying, Charles Griffith is the one we are staying with. Charles Griffith is the one that we want. I have not seen more young people in any campaign in Barbados than I have seen in the parish of St. John. Charles, power to you. You have been prepared for a moment such as this, and I look forward to you getting the mandate from the people of St. John and continuing the excellent work to transform this great parish. Good night, and God bless you. Wednesday, vote for Charles Griffith and give that Barbados Labour Party government the chance to be able to transform this nation again. Thank you.
My sweet Barbados, we greater. Bring me a Molly, we safer. Triple long nights, don't we go wait till later. When I hear my right now, she got vibes galore. We voting Mia and more. She's the best PM for me. Mia and the BLP. Who best to lead this country? Vote Mia and Team BLP. Barbados Labour Party is the only choice for we on call. We want Mia for sure in this election. Mia is the champion, say on call. We want Mia for sure in this election. Mia is the champion, so come. Hands up there, we keep on voting. Mia is the one for me.
Ladies and gentlemen, you've heard from our Prime Minister, Mia Motley, the lady who we all on the 19th of January, with God's help, we wake us up, we go to the polls early, and we cast our vote not just in St. John, but across the length and breadth of this country to re-elect her and Team BLP. And as the Prime Minister goes, we want to wish her Godspeed as she goes to another meeting. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, thank you, Prime Minister Mia Motley. At this time, we continue with our lineup this evening. A man who has been and continues to be offering sterling representation in the constituency of St. Joseph. A man who continues to be at the helm of the government's legal affairs. The man who continues to provide sterling legal leadership in this country. Ladies and gentlemen, I bring to you none other than Attorney General Dale Marshall.
with love and not hatred. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow I all the days of my life. Envy no one, no wish to be with no evil man. For there'll come the day when you'll be grieved by the Father's hand.
I won't be long. I won't be long because you've had 3.5 years to see my friend Charles Griffith work as a member of Parliament. And before that, you've had over 20 years seeing him work as a community leader and an activist for what is right and decent in St. John. My constituency includes part of St. John. Many of you wouldn't know that. The constituency of St. Joseph includes Venture, it includes Clearberry, it includes Wilson Hill. And I can tell you that I would want no better neighbor in politics, no better neighbor in geography than Charles Griffith. At every step of the way, since we became an administration in 2018, Charles has worked with me steadfastly to improve not only the lot of the people who elected him to Parliament, but also to improve the lot of my constituents who share so much in common with him. St. Joseph is not dissimilar from St. John. You have fishing communities and I have fishing communities. You have part of the Scotland district, I have an even larger part of the Scotland district. But geography has never, ever divided us. In fact, many of you would not know that my wife comes from Wilson Hill. And I understand that there's a connection between Charles and her family. So perhaps it is fair to say that our bond far exceeds that of politics. But that is what we are here about. We are here on a political exercise to determine exactly who will run your country, not my country, not their country, who will run your or our country come the morning of Thursday, 20th January. I've been saying again and again and again on this platform that if perhaps you had to go to the hospital to have surgery done, would you even begin to consider asking for the second best surgeon, or the third best surgeon, or the cheapest surgeon, or even the fastest surgeon? In every instance, you would demand the best that money could buy, the best trained, the best person for the job, because your life depended on it. And in much the same way, the issues that are facing our country today require you to ask for the best leadership, not the second best leadership. Perhaps I am elevating our opponents too highly because I don't think that they could even be considered to be second or third or even fourth best. Somebody would consider them to be fourth rate. But I'm not into personality politics. I am here to tell you that pound for pound, man for man, Charles Griffith way exceeds anything that Andre Worrell could offer. He had offered himself to the people of St. Joseph 1 or 2 elections ago. He never got past the nomination stage because the Democratic Labour Party supporters in St. Joseph said, "We don't want you. We don't want you." So now in this election, he somehow feels that by coming home, he somehow feels that by coming to the parish of his birth, that he has a ghost of a chance against the finest representative that we have ever seen. You know, as I walk through St. John, people tell me every day about the Charles Griffith who used to coach them in basketball. They tell me every day about the Charles Griffith who used to arrange cricket and football tournaments. They tell me every day about the Charles Griffith who had an abiding and eternal interest in the youth of this constituency. They don't talk about Charles the politician. That has come more recently. But they talk about the Charles Griffith that they came to know and love over all of the years that he worked in government. And it takes a brave man to give up a career that he's had all of his life, a career that some will consider to be stable, a career with which he's familiar and has an opportunity to rub shoulders with the young people. It takes a brave man to say, I am now ready to go to the next level. Charles has been preparing for this moment for his entire life. Charles is a politician not because of some opportunistic strain in him. Charles is today a politician because it represents the fulfillment of his dream to fully serve the people of St. John. And serve them he has. Let there be no doubt about it. And along the way, he has also served the people of St. Joseph. And Charles, I may not get to say this again in this election. We only have a few days left. But I want to thank you for going to work every single day and daring to provide water for the people in your constituency and in mine, a task that the Democratic Labour Party simply could not wrestle to the ground for 10 years. We had 2 terms of the Democratic Labour Party for whom all things seemed impossible. It was impossible for them to deal with the garbage. It was impossible for them to provide a proper bus service. It was impossible for them to do the day-to-day things that Barbadian taxpayers were crying out to have done. They treated this constituency and other constituencies like stepchildren. They would not attend to the roads. But for the first time you have an administration, or I should say the first time in recent times, you have an administration that goes to work every day, dissects the problems of governance, takes apart the issues that are threatening, causing us difficulty, and deals with them. Former Prime Minister Owen Arthur used to say in the cabinet room that we have to face it and we have to fix it. And fix it Charles does, and fix it every single member of the Barbados Labour Party does. And it hasn't been easy. It has not been easy to wrestle with these issues, especially when on a daily basis you have unexpected challenges being thrown at us. I once remarked that we probably need a bush bath in government. Because it boggled the mind when you consider that we came to government faced with severe economic difficulties and we wrestled them to the ground in short order. And no sooner should we be ready to take off than something called COVID comes from in the east. And all of the fundamentals that we considered were workable, all of the things that we worked out in our heads as being an integral part of our strategy going forward, all of those things vanished into thin air because we simply have never had to deal with something like this in recent memory. Then we had to take the hard decision to impose a curfew on Barbadians. And a hard decision that was. We searched the annals of our history, and as far as we could tell, the last time Barbados was under curfew would probably have been in World War II. That would have been the last time. And so the concept of a curfew was something that was completely alien to the Barbadian psyche. The concept of restricting your movement, restricting your activity, preventing you from having lunch with your family, those are things that were alien to our psyche. But our shoulders were broad enough and our backs were broad enough to say, we will do what has to be done for Barbados. And we got resistance along the way, but at every step, we took Barbadians into our confidence. And when I say we took Barbadians into our confidence, I don't just mean the Barbados Labour Party people. When it was clear to us that we were under significant threat from COVID, this is before even the first case came to our shores. We convened a meeting at the Hilton, and we included in that meeting the major players in industry. We included in that meeting all of the senior public servants. We included Bishop Joseph Atherley as the leader of the opposition. And my friends, we included Verla de Pisa as the leader of the Democratic Labour Party. Because we understood that the issue that beset Barbados in the form of COVID could not be allowed to divide us along partisan lines. We had to draw together. The Prime Minister just talked about Miss Watson, Angela Watson, who understood what it meant to be a Barbadian at heart, and who, when push come to shove, understood that we all had to band together if we were going to make it out on the other side. And I have watched this fine gentleman, Charles Griffith, as he has brought the issues of St. John to the cabinet table. And on no occasion has Charles been partisan, even in the slightest, because he has made sure that every single member of his constituency had an opportunity. And that is the hallmark of a Barbados Labour Party administration. We bring everyone to the table in the interest of uniting, in the interest of achieving a common goal. And for those of you who remember, years and for years, our mantra has been, no one would be left behind. But there are some who are coming to the country at this difficult time and who we recognize are characterized by a divisiveness. They're characterized by an us and them. They're characterized by different treatment for different places depending on who you had in Parliament. And as the Member of Parliament for St. Joseph, I cringe when I think about that, because for the decade between 2008 and 2018, the people of St. Joseph were treated to nothing worse than scorn by the last administration. Our roads, our infrastructure was allowed to disintegrate to the point where places in St. Joseph could not be easily accessible for 10 long years. And they adopted the same attitude towards St. Thomas and St. Andrew and St. Peter. Because for them, as long as you had a representative that was not wearing blue and yellow, your constituents didn't matter. That is not how we approach government. We approach government based on equity, based on fairness, and based on decency. The coming years, I'm sure, are going to throw things at us. And they will throw things at us that we do not expect. But if there's one thing that we have proven to the Barbadian public, is that we are ready for anything that comes our way. The last administration is characterized by despair. The last administration is characterized by knee-jerk reactions. The last administration is best known for being cowardly when difficult times come. but we face our difficult times with honor. We have faced our difficult times with a strength that is characteristic of who and what we are. And it is for the way in which we have faced all of these difficulties that the name of Barbados is now again a name to behold, not just within the region, but across the globe. Barbados is responsible for the Caribbean single market and economy within CARICOM. For 3 terms between 1994 and 2008, Prime Minister Owen Arthur was the beacon of the single market and economy. Across the region and across the world, Prime Minister Arthur was known as the person who wanted to unite the region in terms of its economy. And then we had David Thompson and Frondell Stewart. No disrespect intended to either of them. But the moment the Democratic Labour Party came to govern this country, our standing in the CSME began to decline. It was almost as if Frondell Stewart in particular had absolutely no interest in the concept of the single market and economy. Something that we understand is where the region has to be. But upon resuming office in 2018, Prime Minister Motley began immediately to demonstrate that once more, the name of Barbados would have pride of place within the region, so much so that she has been sought after all across the Caribbean by business leaders, by financiers, by her political colleagues, as being a visionary thinker and someone who can take the region where it needs to be. And there are some who will say that that is about ego, but I say to you it isn't. It's not about ego. It is about excellence. It is about the kind of excellence that Prime Minister Motley requires of her cabinet, but also requires of herself. I want you to reflect on the fact that when last the Democratic Labour Party was in administration, David Eswick wrote a letter to the management of the Barbados Water Authority and instructed them not to meet with the Minister of Finance, Christopher Sinclair. That's what he did. And Prime Minister Frondell Stewart was in no position to demand that anybody toe the line. As they say, he could ask any of them to come back. For the last 3.5 years, you have had a completely different picture. The Dems choose to characterize discipline as the product of despotism. But as a member of perhaps the finest and hardest working cabinet this country has ever seen, I want to say to the people of Barbados that we function as a team. And we function as a team with one leader. And they've tried to say that 14 of us went to Government House and 17 of us went to Government House, and they've tried to throw all of those things in our way. But I ask you to look at the work that we've done and ask yourself if it would have been possible for any government to achieve for this country the things that it has achieved if we did not have a disciplined and unified cabinet. I look forward to all of you in this district, all of you within the hearing of my voice, all of you who are watching us online, who have an opportunity to cast a vote on Wednesday morning. To you going out, I don't care if you go early or late, I want you to go early. But whenever you go, the time that you go is not so important as the name against which you place your X. And I ask you, when you get that pencil in your hand and you are trying to think about who you should vote for, I want you to remember the man Charles Griffith, who has labored night and day for the people of St. John. I want you to remember the man Charles Griffith, who came from among you and for whom many of you have chosen as an example. I want you to remember the man Charles Griffith, who has given of his entire life selflessly to the people of St. John, and who once more is ready to lead this constituency in the way in which it should be led. And for those of you who have friends in St. Joseph, don't forget to ask them to vote for Dale Marshall. Thank you very much. I want to tell you that the next 2 or 3 days are going to be an opportunity where we will be meeting many more of you and addressing your issues. But always remember the 3.5 years that we've put in. Remember that, because they represent a period of excellence and a credit to our nation. I remember at all times the motto, to be a credit to my nation wherever I go. And we must first begin by being a credit to our nation at home. On Wednesday morning, vote Barbados Labour Party, vote Charles Griffith. Good night and God bless you.
Here I come with love and not hatred. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow I all the days of my life. Envy no one, no wish to be with no evil man. For there'll come the day when you'll be whipped by the feathers and leave up huge children.
Thank you very much, AG. Ladies and gentlemen, we've heard from our Attorney General, Dale Marshall, the next representative of the constituency of St. Joseph. College Savannah, ladies and gentlemen online, wherever you are in the world, residents of St. John, now is the time of the evening where we present to you the man who over the last 3.5 years has been your member of parliament. The man who over the last 3.5 years, despite obstacle after obstacle on the international level, still was able to ensure that the constituency of St. John was represented. The man who brought roads, the man who brought buses, the man who brought representation, the man of the soil, Mr. Charles Griffith.
Good night, College Savannah. Blessings on us all. I'm here tonight in College Savannah, and I walk tonight with some deliverables for this particular community. But I want to start where the Attorney General and my Prime Minister refer to. I want to bring you a little bit of the past, some of the present, and a look at the future of what I believe is necessary to move the constituency of St. John forward. So I started, as it relates to community development, way before I even had thoughts about this particular political journey. And I want to share some of that information tonight, because the Democratic Labour Party candidate for this constituency is running around giving people a lot of false information. And I want to say tonight that if you premise your political campaign at the very beginning on lies, then I wonder what would be the end result if St. John had to go that route come the 19th. Because this is a man that said that Charles never did anything in relation to community development, never did anything as it relates to projects. And I want to chronicle my journey to this particular location so that you understand what it is that drives me on a daily basis. And my political leader, for some reason or the other, I seem to be following her wherever she goes. And I will explain. Before this political journey, I was involved in community activity in terms of trying to move my community of Edgecliff forward. I was the president of the club within the community. And I, as Dale would have mentioned, I was functioning as a draftsman. And I got a call from a candidate who previously ran in this constituency. And she said to me, based on your community work, you were recommended to be the youth officer for the constituency of St. John. And I spoke to those persons who were important to my life, and I said, look, I am in a set job as a draftsman, but an opportunity is coming for me to do something that I love. And I was told, but you know that politics is a funny thing, and you get involved and your party get beat, you're out of a job. I said, fine. And I accepted that job with a minister who was then the Minister of Education, Youth and Sports, who happened to speak to you tonight from this particular platform as our Prime Minister. And I embarked on a journey in the constituency of St. John to ensure that I facilitated the needs and aspirations of all the young people in this constituency. And by so doing, it would drive the process of community development. So what did I do? I sought to put projects in place in the constituency of St. John that would move my young people forward. So before Springer had CXC classes were happening at St. John Primary School. I wrote a proposal to UNESCO, and we had $10,000 to fund those programs at St. John Primary School. But government changed, and I got moved. And I was moved to another location, and I mentioned before that the same Democratic Labour Party gave me an award in Christchurch because of the work that I was doing in the location. So when you hear the Democratic Labour Party candidate for St. John speaking about not being engaged in community projects, you must answer and ask him why. And I will show you tonight the only community project that the man was involved in and who triggered that particular project that he was involved with. I will get there. But I was at Youth Affairs, and I walked into the office one morning, and my then supervisor, Mr. Colin Clark, said, I want you to chair something that I'm going to call the block committee. Because he believed, and I did at the same time, that there was a particular demographic in this country that was being ignored, the men that lime on the blocks across this country. And we started Project Oasis. And I got a call that you're supposed, from the same Prime Minister that was here, you're supposed to come to Parliament on Tuesday to meet Prime Minister Arthur because he heard about this project. And I, along with Marcus Stephen and Sean Burke, we went back into the ministry a Saturday, and we crafted a project called Project Oasis at national level that sought to bring release and to reintegrate those persons who lime on the blocks in Barbados back into mainstream society. And I have mentioned from these platforms in the constituency that I will initiate a project called Building Linkages that will come from the office in Clifton Hall that will seek to reintegrate those persons who have made a mistake and currently serving time or at some point in time happen to go to jail because there's a need to reintegrate them into society. So that is part of the push, to ensure that every single person within the constituency in St. John that needs an opportunity to step to the other level, that they have an opportunity to do so. Why? Because the same Democratic Labour Party candidate, and I don't want College Savannah tonight to forget, was part of the process for 10 years that took away your opportunity to walk in the corridors of the University of the West Indies. So when they come to you and they're beating drums and speaking about the Errol Walton Barrow and David Thompson, they're not in that league, and he's not in that league. So reject him. And again, it bears repeating, because if a man is going to lie on his profile to make it seem as if he would have been engaged in community projects in this constituency, then you must ask yourself why. And you know that they rejected what I said in Sherburne, but what did they reject? They rejected the fact that somebody said I did street lights and something about him doing salt breads. But they have not disputed in any way the fact that he is on his profile, and you can go and see it, indicated that he successfully staged a project in St. John from Carifesta. And it never happened. But I want you not to believe me, but to fact check and see. And I mentioned tonight, and I want the cameras to zoom in, because I walk with the evidence. And I want persons to understand that the only community project that this man was engaged in was as a result of the youth commissioner in St. John asking him to teach Mass at Mount Tabor. And for those of you who are watching online, the evidence is here. And I hope that the cameras can pull this. And this is the hype from 1998. And it is showing Andrea Worrell as someone who was asked by the youth commissioner for St. John, Charles Griffith. And that particular portion is highlighted, to do classes at Mount Tabor. But this is the same individual that would want to give you the impression that I never did projects in the constituency of St. John. But College Savannah, I said to you that I walked tonight with deliverables, and I will share now. Because while sitting in the Ministry of Housing, I was aware from being on the ground not only in College Savannah, but Prime Minister referred to it tonight in Bath, that there were persons who were living on land and did not have an opportunity to purchase that land. And I thought, and I was on the ground in College Savannah about a month ago, gathering information, because Codrington Trust sent a letter to the Ministry of Housing and copied it to me, indicating that they wanted to initiate a program similar to what happened in Welch, where those persons who are living on these lands will now have an opportunity to purchase the land under the Tenantries Freehold Purchase Act. And you may have seen, or you may not have seen them as yet, but the land surveyors are on the ground in College Land, and they will soon, if not, be moving to this location to survey lots that people can purchase their lots at $1 per square foot. And I initiated that from housing. But I go further, because I saw a file when I was at housing that referred to Sussex playing field at this particular location. And persons, or the club from inside of this constituency, was paying what they call peppercorn rent to use the facilities there. And I approached the trust and I said, look, we are facilitating the lands by providing the land surveyors. Is it possible that this particular playing field can be included in the process? That the people of College Savannah, because I know that the football coach in this area take those guys to Bladesill to practice. Why? Because the land on the playing field is not fit to play football. But it is coming. And I assure you that in the same way I would have mentioned over and over again, and my mantra is that St. John is rising, College Savannah will rise as well. And I canvassed here last week and I heard about the plight and the state of the roads behind me. And I sit in the Ministry of MTW, Ministry of Transport and Works, and we have devised a plan, Minister Ian Goodenagel and myself and the team, that there should be a focus that will come on developing tenantry roads. So I'm suggesting tonight to College Savannah to hold on, because it was absolutely impossible to do all that was necessary in 3 years in this constituency. And even then, St. John is still rising. And I spoke to you about the past, and I gave you an example of what brought me to this place. But I could not come tonight without giving you some kind of track record in terms of what happened in 3.5 years in a pandemic and under an IMF program. Because we have leadership, and you saw leadership tonight in Mia Amour Motley, a visionary. My journey in youth work was as a result of her deciding that young people in this country needed a focused voice and needed persons to be dedicated to serving young people. And I stepped forth in the constituency of St. John. But what would have happened in 3.5 years? Why am I coming back to you tonight, College Savannah, and asking for another term? Because St. John is rising, and those of you who traverse St. John will see on the landscape that there are changes that were never in place for more than 60 years. So we have roads that were done. The link road from Four Roads to Todds was done. You had the road at Cherry Grove and Henley that was finished. And residents would have carried the nation to Port House. And they said, Griff, you're under pressure. And I'm saying no. Because you heard Prime Minister Motley tonight indicated that the road will be fixed. So when individuals agitate at community level for change, I embrace that. Because I mentioned to you that I was involved in this thing for 20 years. And that is part of the process of community development, that persons living within the constituency or a community must agitate for change. So when the Democratic Labour Party candidate would want you to believe that a video that was done in Sherburne was the reason for fixing the water problems, I say to you, no. It was part of the process of him agitating. But he don't have a stake in BWA in order to change things. He was part of an administration for 10 years that just made $1 billion went away from BWA. $1 billion went missing. But what we did, under the leadership of the lady that you saw tonight, we fixed the water problem and the water issues that was impacting St. John, and I'm humbled to be part of the process at BWA. So, tracts of communities in the constituency of St. John that were impacted, and they would want you to believe that the water problems started in 2018. And those of you who were impacted understand that prior to us taking up the mantle in 2018, that the water problem was acute in this constituency. I still live in the constituency and I was impacted, so I'm not talking about what I heard. I know. And in 3.5 years, I was part of the process that fixed that. I was part of the process that fixed the roads. And those of you who move along Poole would see that in probably the last 20 years, now there is 174 housing project that is coming to Poole under the HOPE program. So I didn't come back to the people because I figure I should. I did what I was supposed to do to ensure that we continue to rise in this constituency. And the process will continue. So those young persons from within the constituency who are looking to purchase a house, it is a fantastic project, and you have it in St. John. So we don't have to go to St. James to get involved in a housing project, because I brought it to St. John. And the Prime Minister asked for what they call a ribbon development, and I was sitting in the Ministry of Housing, and I spoke to the land surveyors, and I said, look, I want a drawing to show this particular area will be development. And I took it to Cabinet, and when we were at break, I took it to my Prime Minister. I said, look, this is what I want for St. John. And she said, let it be. So you will understand that these things are happening. I have a derelict building in Gall Hill, the old polyclinic. And I would have showed at another meeting that the architect's drawing are almost completed. We are waiting for town planning approval. And we will have a small vendors mall at Gall Hill. And hopefully it will include a show pay that persons and older persons in this constituency don't have to go to town or the glebe in St. George. We will have our own in the constituency of St. John. And I heard someone showed me something in a paper where he said that persons were carried to Wakefield and we had a launch. Yes, we had a launch of Project Phoenix. Because I believe that persons in the constituency should see entrepreneurship as a viable means of making a living. And I took in excess of 40 persons to Wakefield to be engaged in farming 50 acres of land. But like I said, when you start a campaign and you don't know what is going on, it is better for the guy to shush. Because what those youngsters are now doing, and all are not finished, so that is the reason why the project is not up and running, because they're part of what you call a feed program. And a lot of the training was done online. So it made no sense that you had 40 or so persons who are interested in farming, and you're going to start the project with 5 or 6 who completed the program and the others are left behind. So tell him that that project will start in earnest, regardless of what he's saying. And in addition to that, we will have a quality add-on to that particular project. Because I believe that if we have individuals who are farming at the level that they are farming, that it must be a situation where some of those produce that are being produced can be turned into another product for onward sales. And plans are in train to do that. And I had discussions with the Moravian Church in relation to using the old primary school at Mount Tabor to ensure that we have a training hub in the constituency of St. John. Because, like I said, my young people must have an opportunity. So when you see skills training back in St. John, it is as the result of a youth commissioner called Charles Griffith walking to the headquarters and saying to them, I have 2 primary schools in St. John and I need to have skills training back in St. John. And I would encourage all of those young males in this particular community who are interested in getting involved in those particular disciplines. And I know tonight that the manifesto of the Barbados Labour Party was circulated and distributed in this particular area. And plans going forward, we are proposing to build 10,000 houses on the landscape of this country. 10,000 houses. And I would hate to believe that my young people, my young men and women in St. John will miss an opportunity to get involved in the process, to become contractors, to become artisans, to be engaged in the process when that construction boom hit. And in the manifesto, you will see that provisions are being made. Provisions are being made for 8 to 12 weeks training programs so that individuals can get involved in the process. And you don't have to go outside of the constituency of St. John, because we have, and I suspect that the training center in Edgecliff, where I live, will be part of the process of churning out those individuals to construct 10,000 houses. But you look inside of the manifesto again and you will see that for those young professionals or those of you who want to build a house and you're younger than 35, that there's a rebate, there's a $3,000 grant for those persons who are engaged or who want to do that. And we go further. If you're building a home and this particular home is in excess of $400,000, there's no land tax. No land tax on that first $400,000. And this is part of a process of a progressive Barbados Labour Party government, who came to power, and 18 months into our stewardship of this country, we were hit by a pandemic that crippled countries that are bigger than us. And under the leadership of Mayor Amor Motley and her cabinet, we were able to navigate those rough seas. We were able to provide care packages. We were able to provide tablets for persons who are home, that they could school at home under the most trying conditions. And I've mentioned before, we had to genuflect to Mother Nature. We had to go on bending knees. And our Prime Minister was able to help us to stand again and to stand strong, because leadership is important. And I want College Savannah tonight to do not forget that for 10 years you had a wicked Democratic Labour Party that stopped our young people from going to the university. And the candidate for the Democratic Labour Party was a part of the process, because he was sitting in the Senate and they were making decisions. So don't be fooled that he was not culpable. He was a part of the process. And to the females, when they went to St. Lucie and lunch and they berated the females who don't have children, I want you to punish them for that, because he was part of the process. He is a member of that team. But, his team is going awry. Because I was sharing tonight with the Attorney General that a female stopped me today and she said, "But who is this man that is running against you? I live in Venture and I vote for Dale Marshall, but they're asking me to vote for Andrea Worrell. The man don't know the constituency." So I am saying to you that, look, I don't want to stress on what is, but the reality is that I must touch on it. And this is a man who in his own community, when I was in the area canvassing, persons asked me, "Griff, who's running against you?" But he's from Sherburne. And I was canvassing in Sherburne. And to try to attack me with the lies and all that they're spewing, all it is doing is making my team and I stronger, because St. John will continue to rise regardless of what the nonsense that he's putting out. We will do what is necessary. So when they attack mothers and females who don't have children and berated them in St. Lucie, I want you to understand, College Savannah, the females in College Savannah, you too were targeted. And I've repeatedly said that you do not have to be a biological mother to nurture a child. But they believe that in the Democratic Labour Party. And we are moving to a new beat, because you have seen in 3.5 years what proactive leadership and proactive government is all about. And you heard Kurt Humphrey tonight. And I said I came with deliverables. And Kurt would have sent an email to me outlining a new development for Concept Bay. I wanted to print it tonight to bring it as evidence as well, but it is there. So Concept Bay will be developed, because I had a conversation with a fisherman guy tonight over the other side of the road. And Concept Bay will be developed at a level to match any other fishing market on this island. So things that were not in place, that were not happening in the constituency, is now coming to the fore. And you have a man that said nothing about when you could not get a bus to come home to College Savannah. Not a single word, and he was in the Senate, and he would want you to believe that he cared something about St. John. But what we did, under an IMF program, we bought 39 electric buses. And you can say to me after, if you still have a bus problem in the constituency, if you have a bus problem here. This is the man who also presided over the garbage situation, and they refused to buy trucks. He was part of the Senate. So don't let him believe that he could come to you and say that I was not aware. He was aware. He was part of the Senate. So we make decisions in Parliament, and then you go to the Senate and you have to approve them there. So all of the challenges that you had for 10 years, he was part of the process. He was part of it. And in the same way that one of my colleagues mentioned the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, they didn't include him, but he must also be part of the process. Because when they brought George Pilgrim, understand, and you may not know because he was not in this particular sector of St. John, he was on the ground in St. John in 2018 saying that he was the candidate that was going to run against me. But the branch and headquarters in George Street believed that he was not fit to come against me in 2018. But you heard tonight the PM indicate that because of this attachment to Verla, that he slipped through. But if they rejected him in 2018 and he did nothing for 3.5 years, why, College Savannah, would you believe that now he's viable? And I'm suggesting to you that come on the 19th, help me and help my Prime Minister to go the extra distance, to move St. John further forward, because there's a lot of work to do. There's a lot of work to do. And I've mentioned the Building Linkages program. I've mentioned the fact that as soon as we are able to have that community center / pavilion in place in College Savannah, that training programs must come to College Savannah, because we have young people in this community that must be able to ply their trade. And I've mentioned before from these on nights about the 15 young ladies that did dressmaking, because they must be able to make uniforms not only for the 3 primary schools, but you must be able to come to Gore Hill and to be able to select uniforms made by persons in the constituency of St. John. And that is part of the push, to push self-employment where it's necessary. It is absolutely impossible for government to find employment for everyone. But if I can craft an initiative that will engage persons and they can move towards self-employment, why not? It is being done all over the place. Why not St. John? And I mentioned before that we have a community center outfitted with computers, and individuals have to go to Christchurch to seek training. And this man who wanted to be was part of the process of government and said nothing about development. And week after week, you would have heard him in Parliament, and nothing, absolutely nothing, about the constituency of St. John that he's now seeking to represent. And I want you to reject that. Because without him, and in 3.5 years, the mantra is in place. St. John is rising. And I guarantee you that come the 19th, and you see what happened in 3.5 years, can you imagine what St. John is going to be like at the end of a 5-year term? Can you imagine what this constituency would look like? A constituency that was said to be the poorest on the island is the poorest no more. Because one of the things I ensured, and one of the things that is constantly in my mind, is that every single pit toilet in this constituency will be removed. And when I was at housing, I started the process to ensure, and to date I believe it is about 27 or so that were removed. And you will see that houses that were repaired outside of ELSA, because rural development was part of the ministry. And you need to feed yourself. So I ensured that houses within this constituency were repaired, that pit toilets were moved, because that is what is supposed to happen. People in this constituency must have some pride and some dignity as it relates to how they live. And you can go, like I said, on my Facebook page and you will not see any of it, because that is not my politics, and it will never be my politics to highlight things of that nature on my Facebook page. You will see the roads, and that will happen. So, St. John and College Savannah, and those of you who are watching via the social media tonight, understand what this is about. Understand that this is not just a vote for Charles Griffith, but this is a vote that will help families in the constituency of St. John. This is a vote that will move our country forward. And if you're patriotic, and if it is that you care anything at all about those colors that my Prime Minister mentioned tonight, then there's only one choice when you go to the poll on the 19th. To vote for Charles Griffith for a continuation of what is happening within this constituency. And that is the focus. That this can no longer be about self. This is about what I can do as an individual for parish, for family, for self, and for country. Because you have a leader that is capable, as you have seen time and time and time again. We have hit by everything and she's still standing. We have developed a hospital in St. Lucie in short order to deal with this pandemic. And that is as a result of leadership that cares, leadership that is visionary. And as I close tonight, I'm asking you for that vote. I was on the ground and I asked you in person, I'm asking you tonight from this place, that when you go on the 19th, that it can't be about just a blind faith or a blind mentality in terms of the Democratic Labour Party is the party that I supported all along. Remember what happened for 10 years and make wise decisions that will impact your family, because that is all I ask for, to strengthen my hand. And in 2018, those of you, like I said, who went on the road to Damascus with me, understand the changes that came. Let's continue on that path. Let's continue to move St. John and to build St. John in a way that you have never seen it before. And I move away with a solemn promise that all that I have said and all that I have identified in terms of what must come to the constituency of St. John, as long as I'm breathing, it will happen, because I live here, because I want to develop here, because people are important. So it can't just be about going to the office. It is about the development of people. It's about the development of country. God night and God bless you. St. John rising.
Pave all the road and shout. Turn on the street lights and shout. Let the people feel right. St. John rising to a higher height. About to explode. Make the thing grow. Need all the votes. Tell them Miss Chris before more cars. St. John rising, yeah. St. John rising, yeah. Shelson and me vibing again. Tell your family, tell all your friends, yeah. St. John rising, yeah. And we ring for life, yeah. Voting Charles as the MP. Put the X for the BLP.
We sticking with Charles. Ladies and gentlemen, you have heard from your next MP for St. John, Mr. Charles Griffith, the man that you will go to the polls on January 19th and place your X squarely in the box next to. You've heard his vision, you've heard his passion, you've heard his history, you've heard his commitment, and you have heard why you need to re-elect him on the 19th of January. But I also want to say to you that we're not done yet. We have someone coming to speak to you to support tonight's platform. Someone who you know very well in the entertainment industry, the coke in the rum and coke. Someone who saw it fit and saw the wisdom in leaving the Democratic Labour Party and joining the Barbados Labour Party. I bring to you someone who has a passion for youth development in this country. I bring to you, ladies and gentlemen, none other than Mr. Simon Ali.
We voted for me, I won't leave. We voted the BLP, Barbados Labour Party. And let me go along, active, the BLP, real active. We voted the Barbados Labour Party. Me, I won't leave, got everything sweet in the country. So no other party can trick me. Let me tell you something too, the BLP is safer for you. We are talking that Verla does.
Good
good night, ladies and gentlemen here in College Savannah. Good night to you, my BLP family. Good night to you, St. John. Truly tonight, it is a humbling experience to be on this platform, to lend my support to a man that I know, that I had the experience of working with years ago in youth development, and your next representative for St. John, none other than Mr. Charles Griffith. And tonight we have had the awesome opportunity to listen to all of the previous speakers. We heard from Kirk Humphrey. We also heard from the Attorney General and, of course, our party leader, Prime Minister Mia Motley. And as I listened, I was able to understand that there was a common thread in all that was said. And that common thread is leadership. And I want to say to you tonight, ladies and gentlemen here in College Savannah, this election should not be taken lightly, because this election is about leadership and about taking Barbados into the 21st century. Now, I want to make it clear that I am here tonight to fully endorse Mr. Charles Griffith, because you would have heard just now his account of his journey from being a youth development officer dealing with Project Oasis, fast-tracking all the way now to 2022, dealing with Project Phoenix. And he rightly said that St. John is rising. And I want to even go further to say that under the leadership of Prime Minister Mia Motley and under a Barbados Labour Party government, Barbados is rising. Leadership matters, ladies and gentlemen. And if there are three things I want to call to your attention tonight, would be leadership, performance, and legacy. I have been speaking on these three areas from the time I was invited on this platform for this campaign. When I was in Poole, I spoke about the importance of leadership, performance, and legacy. And even more recently in Kendall. Now, we understand that leaders are given the task to articulate a vision to persons who would have elected them to power. So one of the things that people don't really talk about with leadership, because people see leadership only as an exercise in power, but leadership is also the exercise in accountability. Now, accountability is very important, ladies and gentlemen, because when you are accountable when things are up and even when things are down. You are accountable to the electorate whenever you knock on doors, whenever you go out in a community canvassing and talking to people and saying, look, this is my vision for my constituency. This is my vision for Barbados. Not only are you placed in a position of leadership, but you must also be accountable. And I want to say tonight that your next representative for St. John will be accountable to you. He will be accessible to you. He will walk in his constituency. He will talk with you. He will articulate his vision for St. John. And for that to become possible and a reality, he needs your support. So come January 19th, we need you out there in your numbers to give support to none other than Mr. Charles Griffith. I have had the awesome opportunity to spend some time reading and looking through the Barbados Labour Party manifesto, owning our future. The future belongs to us. The future belongs to every person, not only in St. John, but across the length and breadth of Barbados. You are investing in your future when you elect a Barbados Labour Party government. And as I was perusing the manifesto, I want to call your attention to page 9, section 3, which says here, transform Barbadian ownership and financial security by creating opportunities for Barbadians to invest and build wealth. Creating the my economy. And I'm going to articulate on that a bit. Creating the my economy. This BLP government, when returned to office, will provide every Barbadian with a digital account which offers a range of tools, including web publishing and payments systems, to enable them to be producers, sharers, and sellers of digital content to the world. We will work with financial institutions, including credit unions, to create new, safe, low-cost platforms for all Barbadians to manage their savings, purchase and sell local and foreign securities, including new and regulated digital and cryptocurrencies. I want to say tonight, ladies and gentlemen, that the Barbados Labour Party is concerned about the future of Barbados and positioning Barbados in an advantageous situation where we are digital and going online. And it would be remiss of me not, at this point, to commend the efforts of Minister Kay McConney and the work that she has done in the Ministry of Innovation, Science, and Technology to make Barbados get online, to create a digital space for Barbadians to do work, and not only to be entertained, but also to conduct business. I want to say tonight that I had the opportunity to finally have the courage to pay for my my driver's license online. Now, yeah, I want to say that when it comes to using online tools, sometimes I am a bit cautious. But to be quite honest, I'm a bit scared. However, I want to say that with the Easy Pay app and that whole system, I was able to go online, pay for my license, and of course now I am once again legally allowed to drive on the roads of Barbados. And the reason why I mention that is because it is important that we embrace technology. And by embracing technology, I want to say to each and every person listening to me tonight, and those of you who are abroad, especially those who are in Canada, who might be locked in right now, it is important to recognize that because of this Barbados Labour Party government having the foresight and the vision, it has allowed and provided a platform for you to conduct your business online. Whether you may be living in Canada or New York or London and you have property here, you can pay your land tax online. If you're a resident here in Barbados and you need to get a police certificate of character, you can apply for that online. I want to say to you, ladies and gentlemen, that 10 years ago, none of this was mentioned. None of this was on the radar for the last administration. And even if it was, we are grateful for this Barbados Labour Party government to bring it into reality. So, ladies and gentlemen, that device in your pocket is probably one of the most powerful devices that will carry you into the 21st century and into the digital age. Because every couple of years or every 2 years, you may be upgrading your phone so that you're able to increase your connectivity. And I want to say that your cell phone is a far more powerful tool than just for entertainment. But let me tell you, entertainment is important. So when you like rum and coke videos and you like your favorite artist, that is good. But using your cell phone to allow you to transact business in Barbados is becoming easier. And that is credit to the Barbados Labour Party government. But I want to go further. I want to go further and say that ownership of our future matters. It is important that from a young age, we get our children exposed to robotics, to coding, to technology, so that they understand that their place in Barbados goes beyond just the traditional fields of employment. We tend to think that the preferred jobs may be those persons who may have degrees in law or accounting or even being doctors. While those professions are needed and are important, it is also very important to recognize the importance of getting our children digitally aware and being able to manipulate the technology to enhance their learning experience. Now, I know that we would rather prefer our children to be back out to school in the classrooms for that social interaction and also the physical activity, because children, along with parents, have been putting on a lot of weight because of COVID and being at home. But I want to encourage you that when you're home with your nephew, your niece, your grandchildren, your children, encourage them to explore not just only watching videos and playing games on their tablets or on their laptops, but to see the portal of knowledge that is available for them, so that for their projects and research, they will be up to date and know what is happening globally. So the Barbados Labour Party government is all about placing Barbados into a place where there is a strategic advantage. And that strategic advantage hinges on the fact that we understand what our greatest resource is. And if I had to ask children in primary school, what is the greatest resource in Barbados? All of them would say, the people. You are the greatest resource in Barbados. Each and every one of you have a part to play in this new Barbados that is rising, not only in St. John, but across all of Barbados. All of you are important to the future of Barbados, not just for elections, but for the future of this country. And it is important that if you want to see a brighter Barbados, a better tomorrow, it is very important that come January 19th, you put your ex to support Mr. Charles Griffith, a man who has articulated his track record here to you tonight. It was confirmed by Prime Minister Mia Moore-Motley. It was also confirmed by the Attorney General, Dale Marshall. Politics is about leadership. Leadership is about service. And service is about accountability. I said earlier, as it relates to leadership, we have to be very careful right now in this Barbados with politicians and leaders. Let me explain the difference. Most selfishly driven politicians are eager for power. They want to get power. When you look at the other political organizations in this country, they want power. But leadership is different. A leader doesn't seek power for himself. He seeks to empower the people who would have elected him. So politicians seek power, but leaders empower the people. And tonight I want to empower each and every one of you to search your minds and hearts and to catch the vision for a better St. John, a 21st century St. John. Even as you are at home sitting, watching and listening, and those of you who are here at this spot meeting, think about what improvements you would want to see in your community. What are the things that would make life easier in St. John? And as you think about those things, articulate them to your member of parliament. Articulate those ideas to Charles Griffith. And I'm telling you tonight that he will listen and that he will be able to pass that information on and to develop strategy and policy to help your constituency become better and brighter. Tonight, I am truly grateful. I am truly grateful for the work that this Barbados Labour Party government has done in 3.5 years. It wasn't easy. There were lots of challenges, economic challenges, environmental challenges, health challenges. But nevertheless, under the leadership of Prime Minister Mir Amor Moutley, everyone put their hand to the plow and they worked to ensure a brighter Barbados. And now, the ball is in your court. Come January 19th, I urge you, I implore you to give your support to none other than Mr. Charles Griffith. And let's see St. John rise again. I thank you for your indulgence, ladies and gentlemen.
We are talking that Verla does do. I won't hear nothing from she and that crew. We are talking that Verla does do. I won't hear nothing from she and that crew. The BLP is a party for you. Vote for the future, vote for the truth. Look, active, active. Auntie me, I got the place active. Activate, activate. The BLP, we gotta be safe out here. Look, active, active. Auntie me, I got the place active. Activate, activate. The BLP, we gotta be safe out here. The BLP got the place nice up. All other parties run out of luck.
Thank you very much, Simon. Ladies and gentlemen, you've heard from Simon some of the things that the Labour Party has in its manifesto. And for those of you who have not seen it yet or have gotten hold of a copy in your hands, I implore you to do so. Because on the one side, it gives an account of the stewardship that the Labour Party administration has had for the 3.5 years at the helm of our governance. And then it gives you phase 2. And therefore, when you go to the polls on the 19th of January, you're doing so in circumstances where this is about not just another election in the history of Barbados. This is not just about another election where we elect the Barbados Labour Party. This is an election where we are renewing our commitment to the development and further advancing of our country at a time and in circumstances where the world is going through and continues to go through some very difficult and perilous times. And when you go into the polls on the 19th, you are doing so in circumstances where you have on the one side proven and tested leadership that is respected not just domestically and regionally, but across the world. And on the other hand, you have a party posing in our Barrow's name who bear no resemblance, features, characteristics, or philosophy to the party that he once formed and led. And I want to cast your minds back, ladies and gentlemen. Many of you tonight, when you would have spoken to us throughout the campaign, you reminded us when Andrea Worrell's party took the ability of ordinary Barbadians away to access at the point of delivery free tertiary education. He was a part of the Senate. He was a part of the Democratic Labour Party. We're not talking 10, 20 years ago, but between 3.5 to 5, 6 years prior, he was at the helm in that team that robbed ordinary Barbadians from accessing free tertiary education. And you may ask yourself, what is the importance of that? Barbados is not like other countries in the world, also some countries in our region who are blessed with natural physical resources. We have no gold, we have no bauxite, we have no abundance of oil. But what we do is that we have 290,000 odd souls. 290,000 odd souls who God has placed on this earth with a God-given talent. And in order to harness and develop that talent even more and to take it to the next level, education becomes that plank that allows us to launch forward. And it is the plank that has allowed Barbados within the last 60 years or so to rise height after height after height the world over. But I really want to touch on something that was mentioned before. I said to you, this is an election about comparisons, but it is also an election about ensuring that the integrity of those who come to public life come so in circumstances where they understand that those who they seek to represent, they must not insult. And it is very clear, it is very, very clear that in this campaign 2022, the Democratic Labour Party has not learned from the lessons of the 2018 campaign. How many of you remember when Verla de Pisa took up the mantle of Barrow's party? And she said that the Democratic Labour Party is a new party. She said that the Democratic Labour Party is a party that is one that is not going to be insulting anyone anymore. And you would have heard tonight when Charles referenced the very, I don't even know what to call it, disgusting words coming from a Don Marie Armstrong, the candidate for St. George South, and insulted the women in this country. And I say to you, you've heard where we have come from. Call it Savannah and St. John, and those online, you've heard where we are going. And ladies and gentlemen, we certainly articulated to you in this document here how we intend to get there with your help. And it is very clear that on the 19th of January, you wake up early and you go to the polls. And when you go to the polls, you place your X, not just for Charles Griffith, but for the Barbados Labour Party candidate across the length and breadth of this country. And when you do so, you go back home or you go to your work and you get on WhatsApp, you get on Instagram, you get on Facebook, and you encourage your friends and your families to do so. And in a similar vein, all across the length and breadth of this country, everyone would have done their part and their civic duty in ensuring that we re-elect the Barbados Labour Party in taking us to the next level. And therefore, when you do so, you're doing so with the confidence that you have a team who is proven time and time and time again. But there's also something that I also want to talk about. I remember when I started as ambassador to the United Nations in 2018 in Geneva. For the first month or so, there was a little hard earth. And by that what I mean, initially when I first went there, when Barbados raised its flag, there wasn't necessarily a warmth towards Barbados. And I'll tell you why. And I learned this weeks after. Colleagues said to me the reputation that Barbados had on the international stage as a result of the poor leadership, not just domestically, but internationally. When Frondell Stewart was Prime Minister and his ministers and his team, they didn't care about Barbados' international reputation. And Barbados became a laughing stock. I had friends and colleagues who worked across the region. And they said when Barbados took the floor in regional meetings, people got up and took coffee breaks. Because why? What was coming out of Barbados' representatives was not fit for purpose. This was not the Barbados they knew. This was not the Barbados that Kofi Annan said punched above its weight. It was a different Barbados. And when you talk about Frondell Stewart's words this week, saying that Barbados had glorious years under his stewardship, you have to ask yourself, glorious for whom? And how? Clearly, he was not talking about the ordinary Barbadian who could not get a bus, who could not access tertiary education free at points of delivery, who did not have representatives that can articulate Barbados' position abroad in clear and articulate terms. Representation that allowed for us as a nation not just to walk with our shoulders high, but also walk with humility in lifting others in our circumstance, realities, fellow SIDS nations, fellow developing nations, to articulate a path of growth and development around the world. And therefore, when you translate that and compare that to what happened within the last 3.5 years, many of you would remember within the last 3-4 months, we became the smallest nation on earth. The smallest nation on earth to ever host an UNCTAD conference, the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development. And what does that mean? What is the significance to you, the ordinary man, you may ask? Within the entire UN system, there is an organization, as I said, called UNCTAD. And UNCTAD was created at a time when the world was going through a very difficult time economically. And those in the developing world and the global south were caught behind their developed counterparts. And UNCTAD, created by Raoul Prebisch, became that institution in the entire world that had a singular mandate to treat to all issues of trade and to treat to all issues of development. And every 4 years, the world's leaders meet around the world for 1 week to discuss all issues of trade and development that impact the developing world. And for the first time in the history of a small nation, not just in CARICOM, but in the entire world, Barbados became that country to lead and to host UNCTAD 15. I certainly was very proud to be the ambassador to negotiate on our behalf, led by the leadership of Prime Minister Mia Mottley. And it is not just that we held the conference, but in doing so, in being the host of that UN conference, our Prime Minister tonight, as a result of being the host of UNCTAD 15, is the world leader. I repeat, Mia Mottley is the world leader that now is the president of UNCTAD. And what does that mean? It means she is the world leader that speaks on behalf of the global South. She not just speaks on behalf of Barbados, she speaks on behalf of every developing country, whether they be in CARICOM, whether they be in Africa, whether they be in Asia. It does not matter. Mia Mottley is the world leader who is leading the trade and development agenda. So when you elect Charles Griffith on the 19th of January, you are also re-electing our Prime Minister to continue to be the trailblazer on behalf of the world's developing economies. And this is important even more so in the advent of COVID-19. We have seen and we have felt and continue to feel the very tough ramifications of COVID-19. COVID has decimated tourism economies around the world. COVID has decimated economies who are reliant on oil. Because why? The demand for these goods and services has declined. And therefore you need a team that understands not just the international community, but at the same time understands what the local economy and those of us in Barbados need. And therefore you marry the two. You have to have a team who can negotiate on your behalf in the World Trade Organization, in the World Health Organization, in the World Intellectual Property Organization, in the Human Rights Council. Because why? Everything that we do as a small island state in this country is dependent on our external space. And therefore you have to have strong, articulate leadership who can navigate the rough waters. Can you imagine if Rondell Stewart, at the time in 28, was elected again as Prime Minister? God in his infinite wisdom sat on the throne of grace in heaven and saw ahead in circumstances where we could only see so far. And he knew that there would have been a COVID-19. He knew that there would be ashfall. He knew that there was going to be global uncertainty. And he placed at the helm of this country Mia Mottley to lead our country. And I tell you, it reminds me of the time in the Bible when they insulted Mia Mottley last election, world without end. They were symptomatic and reflective of the Pharaoh in the Bible. And Mia Mottley, like Moses, fighting on behalf of her people, was marching towards the Red Sea, no pun intended. And therefore she marched and she marched. They insulted and they insulted. And as she moved towards the Red Sea, God opened up the Red Sea and he drowned all of them who were in the divisive ways. And we had a 30 love. And I am saying to you, God is not going to lead us from 2018 to 2021, covered us in the name of Jesus and give us a good leader and now take us back to the dark days of those who have no interest in you. And I say to you tonight, Verla de Pisa, unless you repent to the people of Barbados, you have no place in our history to lead anybody because you have not done what is necessary of you to do. But at this time, I want to bring to you a man of the soil, a man who understands St. John well, a man who is, in my mind, not only articulate, but understands the nexus between development, technology, and young people. I bring to you none other than Mr. Stephen Favre.
Don't stand for a man, play that you vex. Get out there and give me the X. Cause you know BLP is the best. BLP. If you love Barbados as bad as me, vote for BLP. Mia and the team BLP. Vote for BLP. You want the best for this country. Vote for BLP. Barbados Labour Party is for we. Vote for BLP.
good night to all in College Savannah. You know, one of the interesting things about being a part of this campaign is that I've gotten an opportunity to work with some very, very kind, special people. Now, I have walked this journey with Charles Griffith in this constituency for quite some time. And I can attest to the fact that this is a man who not only inspired me to throw my hat in the ring with him, but also to maintain that friendship, that camaraderie, and that focus on assisting the people and the residents of St. John to step higher. And it has been an amazing journey the last 3.5 years for me personally, for our relationship, and for what I have seen done to transform the landscape of St. John. Now, in some ways, my friend Charles Griffith is a very modest man. He does not like to highlight certain things, and I want to let you know what I'm talking about. I remember when we started this journey and he laid out his vision before me, one of the things that struck me was the level of sincerity that he showed when he talked to me about what he wanted to achieve for the people of St. John. And for those who know me, you know that I know when somebody is singing a song from when somebody is telling a tale. And I assessed that Mr. Charles Griffith was a man who could be trusted. And ladies and gentlemen, it was with that in mind that our journey together started, and I have come to see that truly as a man of his word, he is passionate about the development of St. John. Not only that, but he is a man who listens. He is not afraid to say, I don't know. But he is also a man that when a good idea comes to him, he will take it and run with it because he knows. And if he knows that it is for the benefit of the people of St. John, then this man will go all out. And ladies and gentlemen, one of the interesting things about him, I remember when we had started the journey of helping those persons in the community who were living in very unflattering circumstances. Their homes were termite infested. They were having challenges with their water and other things. And when we looked and we surveyed the area, he said, look, I remember distinctly he said to me, he said, Steve, I don't want that we highlight any of these cases because persons must be able to stand with their dignity intact. Now that is a man of the people. So when we help persons in the communities, and I will remember and I will call them out, over 35 houses were newly rebuilt in the constituency during the last 3.5 years. 35 houses, new houses for residents of St. John. But not only that, over 140 houses have been repaired so far and more are continuing, and that happened before and after Hurricane Elsa and the freak storm. And I'm sure you didn't hear him mention any of that, but I will mention it because, ladies and gentlemen, that is the measure of the man that we are seeking to be able to continue in this constituency of St. John. And ladies and gentlemen, one of the most admirable things that I remember about him, and I was there, so I can tell you, was when we were talking about living spaces, greening spaces for the residents of St. John. And we looked at Pool Woods. It was a burning desire on his heart to provide a green space for the residents of St. John to just come and chill, come and cool out. Just sit down, have a good time, have a meal with the family, and be able to recreate. And ladies and gentlemen, let me say to you that the gentleman that you have the privilege of electing on January the 19th is a man of the people. And ladies and gentlemen, as I close tonight in my short address to you, I want to let you know that in voting for Charles Griffith, you are voting for progress. You are voting for continuing progress in St. John. So, ladies and gentlemen, with that, I want to say, go out January 19th, early, and place your X on that box in between the lines on behalf of Charles Griffith. Thank you. May God bless you. Stay safe.
Thank you very much, Stephen. Ladies and gentlemen, we continue our lineup tonight, and I bring to you a man who is and has been a strong representative in the constituency of St. Michael West Central. A man who, as they call him, the Energizer Bunny of Cabinet. A man who continues to work hand in hand with Charles, and a lot of what you will see in St. John and the Eastern Corridors and also across Barbados is as a result of his work sterlingly. I bring to you none other than Mr. Ian Gooding Edgell.
Your next representative for St. Michael West Central, Ian Gooding Edgell. A man of the people, a man you can trust. In good times or trouble, Ian is there for us. A young man with vision, confidence and zest. The man for the mission, West Central he is the best. Ready to vote like mad, run them out how we hard. Ready to vote like mad, run them out how we hard. Ready to vote like mad, run them out how we hard. Ready to vote like mad. On the road again, easy choice my friend. Tell them don't get vexed, this is the man that gets in the X. On the road again, easy choice my friend. Tell them don't get vexed, this is the man that gets in the X.
Good night. Good night. A wonderful good night to the people of St. Joseph and surrounding areas, because I know we all have a border with St. Philip as well. But I've come tonight to ask you, on the basis of the stewardship of Charles Griffith, my friend and my colleague within the ministry, to say to you that for many years you have asked for work to be done in this constituency, and that Charles Griffith came to you before the 2018 general election. He worked with you. He knocked on your doors. He walked the streets. He interacted with you. He used all the skills that he had honed when he worked within the Ministry of Youth. He used his training to capture the imagination of the people. And this son of the soil of St. John came to you in 2018, asked you for your support after working with you. And you, the residents of St. John, sent him to Parliament to serve your interests. And I am pleased tonight to be here for several reasons. But I met Charles directly when we met, when I assumed the post of Minister of Transport Works and Water Resources. And Charles demonstrated the passion, the energy, and the talent required to undertake this job. Having served in the cabinet before me, he brought to the ministry the relevant skills and knowledge and understanding of government. And he went to work with me in what I will ever and forever recall as a wonderful and momentous achievement. Having worked together on several projects to bring benefits to this community and beyond St. John, might I add. And Charles and I went to work in the Ministry of Transport Work and Water Resources. And he was involved in every major decision in the ministry. And everybody in the ministry will tell you that we went to work and we worked hard. And Charles Griffith, your member of parliament, was there with me throughout this journey. And Charles Griffith commenced that journey with you. And Charles came to this constituency and he said that he had to work and work laboriously so on your behalf. And what has been his accomplishments? What did he achieve in your name in St. John? As I move around St. John with him, he was able to articulate for more infrastructure in St. John. He worked hard, he worked tirelessly to ensure that the residents of St. John can now boast of new infrastructure. And when I say infrastructure, what am I referring to? Look at the road network in St. John. Compare the road network in St. John to the year prior to 2018 when you didn't send Charles Griffith to Parliament. Now you have Charles Griffith in Parliament. You can boast of improved road network and road infrastructure in St. John. Look at it. The roads, the number of roads that Charles Griffith has been able to get paved or reconstructed is simply beyond your imagination. Who would have thought that during a pandemic, during a term in office, that we had to correct the neglect of the Democratic Labour Party? Can you imagine that even during a pandemic, that Charles Griffith, your parliamentary representative, your minister responsible for water resources, would have ever accomplished all that he did in St. John? And he did it because he has a good heart. Charles Griffith did it because he has your interest at heart. He did it because he cares and he believes in you, the people of St. John. And when you look around this constituency and you see the roads that have been done in here, be it Sherburne, be it Carter's Road that we are finishing, when you look all around this area, this constituency, you can see real progress. You can see a man at work on your behalf. And I've had a wonderful pleasure working with him. And when it comes to water, you know what Charles Griffith has done in St. John for the people of St. John. He's also done great works for the people of St. Joseph and St. Thomas. And he continues to go to work, helping the people even in St. Lucie, and I can come to that shortly. But in St. John, he was able to ensure that over 23 kilometers of new mains were laid in St. John for the people of St. John. He went to work and he worked tirelessly to ensure that water would continue to flow through the taps in St. John. And I tell you, if there's one major accomplishment that you have to feel very proud about, it has to be the water improvements undertaken in the parish of St. John. Can you imagine, prior to 2018, the challenges that the residents of St. John had with water? Go way back. Think about it. Not only St. John, but St. Joseph, like I said. There were people at Christmas time who didn't have water. There were people at Easter who didn't have water. Thanks to Charles Griffith. Thanks for his energy. Thanks for his commitment and dedication to St. John, that he was able to lead the water augmentation project at Vineyard. And that project at Vineyard has brought significant benefits to St. John. And the benefits include new water mains, more water flowing through the distribution mains into St. John, so that you will never have the indignity of not knowing if you will have water flowing through your taps any morning when you get up to take a bath or to prepare yourself for work. That is a significant accomplishment. It is a wonderful feat. And it is thanks to Charles Griffith, your duly elected member in 2018, who promised you that he would fix some of the issues in this constituency. And I'm very proud of his tenure. And I know that St. John, based on what I'm hearing, based on what I'm feeling, that you too are very proud of Charles Griffith. And I know, based on what I'm hearing, that the people of St. John are so happy, are so comfortable with his competent leadership in this constituency, that they are going to go to the polls on January 19th, and they are going to vote in their resounding numbers for Charles Griffith to be sent to Parliament for another term in your name. And going to Parliament again for Charles Griffith will be a continuation of the works that he started in this constituency. A continuation of the improvements to infrastructure and improved road facilities, road infrastructure, improved water. Charles Griffith will do what it takes in the next term to ensure that he continues the transformation that he started in this constituency. And what a wonderful transformation it has been. This minister, Charles Griffith, has been the one who has worked side by side with me in the ministry. He has worked with me every day. And I tell you, every day Charles Griffith has worked with me. And he's worked to build out St. John and Greater Barbados. But he was with me when we accomplished many things in the ministry. And I'm going to cite some tonight. I told you about the Vineyard Augmentation Program. That within a year, he and I were responsible, along with the teams at the BW and the ministry, for having water being restored to St. Joseph and St. John and St. Thomas. But I didn't tell you that Charles Griffiths was with me when we decided to procure electric buses into Barbados. And we brought the buses to Barbados. And based on the splendid record, based on the wonderful accomplishment, those buses, those electric buses, continue to grace our roadways and highways in Barbados. It is Charles Griffiths who was there every day, helping me side by side to build out Barbados and to ensure that St. John got its fair share. And indeed, St. John got its fair share. When you see the buses driving through St. John, when you see those electric buses, who do you have to say thanks to? You have to say thanks to Charles Griffith for being there and representing your interests to ensure that electric buses remain on the bus routes in St. John. It was Charles Griffith who was there to help us build out Barbados. You see a ministry and sometimes you don't understand the intricacies of the ministry. But at the ministry, we have responsibility not only for water, not only for public transport, not only for roads, but for drainage. And I know that you've seen the works that he has done in respect of the detention and retention ponds in St. John to mitigate flooding in this constituency. So that when I look at Charles's scorecard, when I look at his performance, you can't help but say a constituency that needed work. He came here, he told you he was going to get the job done. He was appointed as a cabinet minister. He continued to work hard on your behalf. And he worked hard to steady the ship within the Ministry of Transport, Work and Water Resources. And like you, I am very proud of Charles Griffith. I'm exceptionally proud of what he's been able to do in this constituency. And I want you, when you go to the polls on January the 19th, I want you to vote for Charles Griffith in your numbers. I want you to bring along your family members and your friends. I want you to take them to the polling station with you. And I want you to go out there and vote for Charles Griffith. Go out in your numbers on January 19th. I want you to say with confidence in your numbers and with your votes at the polls that you remain absolutely assured of the continuation of the works that Charles Griffith commenced in this constituency. It has not been easy. Perhaps the Barbados Labour Party has made it look too easy. Perhaps we have. Because the work that we have done, take for example what we did managing during a pandemic. Name another country that was able to do the number of roads that we did in Barbados during a pandemic. And St. John, you know, because you are driving on the roads that Charles Griffith engineered and helped to ensure that you get these roads up here. You can bear witness to it. We, during the pandemic, were able to ensure that those who were unemployed got unemployment benefits. During the pandemic, those who were working in the hotel sector and they didn't know when they were going to get their next paycheck, Charles Griffith and the Barbados Labour Party stepped forward to ensure that you were a beneficiary of the best program and that you got money in your pocket during the pandemic. It was Charles Griffith who fought on your behalf. It was Charles Griffith who's turned the corner in this constituency when people were crying out. It was Charles Griffith during the pandemic that came around and knocked on your doors, inquiring of your well-being and ensure that you had food, be it a hamper or a voucher. That is what Charles Griffith did for his constituents in St. John. Could you ask for a better representation? Could you ask for a better representative in Charles Griffith? It was Charles Griffith during the pandemic who was seen when others who now appear on the scene wanted to be seen. It was Charles Griffith's commitment to Barbados and St. John that led the charge for a better Barbados and a better St. John. And I know that you would agree with me that St. John today is better than it was yesterday because Charles Griffith went to work and worked hard in your name. And I say to you, for a man who's done so much, who's contributed so much to this constituency, I say to you, he deserves another term. And I know that you are going to go to the polls on January 19th and you're going to give Charles Griffith another term because he has earned. You are going to give him another term, St. John. Are you going to give him another term, St. John? Are you going to give him another term, St. John? I know you are going to give him another term. I say to you, representation is about touching the lives of people. Representation is about being there with you. I recall when Hurricane Elsa came through Barbados, that Charles Griffith was walking all through and driving all through this constituency, checking upon his constituency, his constituents, checking out the needs of the people in this area, be it getting a tarpaulin to have immediate shelter, be it organizing for the residents to be housed in another location who lost their homes. It was Charles Griffith who went out there and ensured that they had food. It was Charles Griffith who was seen walking and driving up and down this constituency. Not a Latter-day Saint, ladies and gentlemen. I say to you, on the basis of his record, his startling contribution to St. John, I know that you are going to give him another term. And that is why I am pleased, I am so happy that he drove all the way from St. Michael West Central. And Charles, I bring greetings from the constituency of St. Michael West Central. And as you can see, we have some of our constituents here tonight. And they've asked me to tell you that all is well and all will be well in St. John come January 19th. And I know some people in St. John who've said to me, don't worry, Gadinegel, about Charles Griffith. Charles Griffith will be coming home in resounding numbers on this occasion. And they said to me, they said that they know of Charles Griffith and his record. They told me that they know he will continue to be the performer. So I've come here tonight. I've really come here tonight to say thank you for allowing Charles Griffith to be with me for the last 17 months. It has been a pleasure, Minister Griffith, to have been working with you. I went to work every day. Even during the ash fall, your minister was at work with us in the office working on your behalf. That shows you the measure of a man. It tells you something about his character. It tells you something about representation. And as I conclude tonight, I want to say to all of St. John, I want you to return Charles Griffith to Parliament. He deserves your support. He has earned your support. And on the basis of his works in St. John alone, I want you to return him to the Parliament. So on the night of January 19th, when the returning officer goes to the floor before the microphone, I want to hear that Charles Griffith is a duly elected member for the parish of St. John on January 19th. And I'm going to come to St. John and I'm going to join in the celebration with Charles Griffith because Charles Griffith has done an outstanding job. Ladies and gentlemen, St. John is safer with Charles Griffith. Barbados is happy to have Charles Griffith. Go to the polls on January 19th. Vote Barbados Labour Party. Vote Charles Griffith and let us seal the deal. Good night and thank you.
Thank you very much, Ian Gadinegel. You see why they call him the Energizer Bunny of Cabinet? I tell you, the man does not plug out. But you know, to bring it home. You always have to have someone, if you watch T20 cricket, someone who understands the game, someone who can read the ball well, not only to hold the end, but to play some shots. I am bringing to you, ladies and gentlemen, a woman who continues to be at the forefront of our educational revolution in Barbados. A woman who continues to strive despite some very tough times around the world. But with a steady hand, she has led our educational, technological, and vocational training over the last 3 years. She has been the leader of our government business in Parliament. I bring to you none other than Santia Bradshaw.
Standing taller to face the darkest and the hardest of times. We'll be taking care of all the children thereof, but if it's required, we'll be on the front line. You can call me by my name.
I am ready to roll. Good night, St. John. Good night, Barbados. Good night to all who are listening online. They say I am closing the show tonight, and I'm happy to be amongst my family in St. John. Many people don't know that I come out of the bosom of this constituency, both from my father's side and my mother's side. And it was really good a couple of years ago to be here at College Savannah, to be able to speak to you, the good people of this community, and to share with you my views as to why Charles was supposed to be the representative for this constituency. I believe that Charles has earned his keep. And I remember on that last occasion saying to you that the people of St. John deserve better. Given the long history of this constituency and its representation, I believe that the people of St. John deserved a representative that was going to fight for the people of St. John and to improve the living conditions of the people of this community. And I am proud tonight, as someone who has come out of the bosom of this area, to be able to say thank you to Charles for the fight that he has taken at the level of cabinet, that he has taken to the Prime Minister on many occasions to make sure that the people of this community and the people of this entire constituency can be able to say that they have had true representation in Charles. On many occasions, Charles has fought for not just housing, because you all have had in these particular areas the impact of the hurricanes, you've had the impact of the flash flooding, and Charles has been fighting within cabinet to make sure that the adequate resources have been allocated to the people of St. John. And I must tell you, regardless of how many of us have felt about what we needed allocated in our own constituencies, we understood our responsibility to the people of St. John, having come through with the mass canvases in 2018 and before, having seen the conditions in which people live, the fact that in many cases people didn't have the water accessible to them. And we understood that his fight was also the fight of the entire Barbados Labour Party. And I'm therefore proud to be part of an administration tonight that can come back to the people of St. John, to come on this platform to be able to say to you that Charles Griffith has done an excellent job in representation for all of you. I want to begin tonight by talking a bit about not just the road that we've come, but what is on offer in this election? Because many people have asked, well, what is the Barbados Labour Party bringing to the table? But also particularly, what is the Democratic Labour Party bringing to the table? And we can poke fun. I can stand here and talk about the fact that they've not been able to talk about the fact that Verla de Pisa is their future prime minister. And they haven't been able to say much more than that she's the candidate for St. Lucie. I can talk about all of those things. But I'm more concerned tonight to talk about the things that, as far as I'm concerned, must matter to the people of St. John and to the people of this country. And it relates to how both parties have been able to present to the people not only their manifesto, but their plans and their policies for how they intend to take this country forward. When I look at the Democratic Labour Party manifesto, and I must admit that I had an opportunity to just glance through a few of the policies earlier this evening, I was concerned because it just seems to be quite a hodgepodge of issues that they've pulled together and policies, and not something that has been properly thought out. Not properly thought out in such a way that the people of St. John can say that they can find something within the manifesto that says that the people of the Democratic Labour Party have given thought to what it is that the people of this community and this constituency require to take them further. The manifesto has a number of what I consider to be a lot of desperate ideas. And the fact of the matter is, I can say this without fear of contradiction because I was part of an administration back in 2018 that even prior to the election had started the process of looking at what was required to transform Barbados. What was it that we were required to do when we got to government? We didn't know when the election was going to be called. If it was left to Frundell Stewart at the time, he, as far as he was concerned, was going to have 20 years in office. So it wasn't a situation where we could sit and we could wait to see when he was going to call the election. We had to plan, and for many years, we had to take stock of where we were, but also look at analysis of what it is that the Democratic Labour Party was doing, and look at the downgrades that have been the consequence of their maladministration. We had to look at what it was that when we came to government, we had to do in order to hit the ground running. And I would have thought that the Democratic Labour Party, while having this break from leadership, would have taken the opportunity to examine not just what we've been doing, but to look at how they could bring to the electorate of this country a set of policies that perhaps would give a snapshot of how they would be able to take us forward. The fact of the matter is that their manifesto doesn't collide with the issues that the country is confronting at this point in time. And the truth be told, the two major challenges that we are facing as a country now are COVID and the management of COVID and the economy and its recovery. Those are the two issues that are facing every Barbadian. How are we going to get through COVID? How are we going to manage this crisis? And how are we going to deal with the economic consequences of what we are facing as a result of this pandemic? The approach taken by the Democratic Labour Party towards COVID has, for the most part, been extremely pathetic. We would have hoped that, as we did on many occasions when we were the opposition, we joined forces with the Democratic Labour Party, supporting things where they made sense, because we didn't support the things that did not make sense, but we supported them because we understood that we had a responsibility to Barbados and that our stability as a country had to be the one thing that was keep our people together and not seek to divide us. And so when this whole pandemic arose, we found that the Democratic Labour Party's cries were mainly about shutting down the economy, closing down business, not trying to manage a crisis, because the truth is they had never managed the previous 10 years in office. So to have to be confronted with something of the magnitude of a global pandemic, none of them were prepared, and still are, it is clear, are prepared to be able to put forward policies to help us to manage through this crisis. On the one hand, they claim they're following the science. Well, truth be told, we're following the science too. And we are seeing across the world that we have gone from testing people at the airports to allowing people to enter and then to be able to take the necessary precautions after to do testing and to allow them to be observed for a period of days. We've seen that change. Before everybody, we had all the congestion at the airport. And we understood the challenges that we were having as a small economy, because the Grantley Adams International Airport was not built to deal with a pandemic, was not built to deal with the traffic that was coming through and to deal with the separation of people within the system. But we made do with what we had, and we tried to accommodate in those early stages because we didn't have the understanding that we do now regarding the virus. And so the world has taken a different turn, where when they said, shut it down, we said, no, we're going to manage it. We're going to watch what the rest of the world is doing, what larger countries are doing, and we are going to adapt accordingly because we always understood that we were a tourism-driven economy. And therefore, we had a responsibility to hold strain and to make sure that while we keep our people safe, that we couldn't just shut our borders to the rest of the world, because that is what gives us our livelihood. Their approach to keeping out the virus was tighten the borders. And again, I don't know if even for what they are planning, if there were to be the government, they are suggesting that we go ahead with mass testing again. But again, they're not reading the science, because Chad and others will tell you in the rest of the world that they are not testing in the way that they used to, simply because they're also running out of tests. And therefore, they're calling on people to take greater responsibility for their actions as well. And that is what the Labour Party has been asking people to do, whether it is our rush to get vaccinations and saying to the people of this country, get vaccinated. Work with us to be able to make sure that we have another layer of protection. Take responsibility by wearing your mask. Take responsibility by sanitizing. We've said to the people of this country, you are as responsible for your safety as the government of Barbados is responsible for you as well. The fact of the matter is that to introduce or to reintroduce mass testing at this point in time is only going to be chaotic. It's going to cause problems within the airport. We already have a good season. We've seen the increase in our tourism arrivals. We've seen people coming. And regardless of all of the fear-mongering that they want to create amongst the society, the truth of the matter is that the numbers coming into the borders with COVID is not what they want to lead us to believe that it is. The percentage is nominal. And therefore, the responsibility is on us as Barbadians to get it right in terms of our own responsibility to each other. It is clear that many of the things that they are suggesting now, even in terms of the management of this crisis, are things that they considered early on in the first stage of this pandemic. Because the thing about the Democratic Labour Party is that they are not forward planners, you know. The Barbados Labour Party, if there's one thing that we can always be accused of, is that we are not only trying to deal with today, but we are constantly trying to deal with tomorrow. We are trying to deal with 5 years from now, 10 years from now, and for generations to come. So none of our policies are set in stone for today alone, but we constantly have to be looking at how we re-engineer what we do today, because we understand that we are a vulnerable society, and we therefore have to take these things into account. There has been little mention by the Democratic Labour Party about having any serious vaccination policy. They've been critical about us in terms of how we acquired vaccines, not realizing that not one red cent was spent by the Barbados Labour Party in order to acquire the vaccines in the first place. But what we had to do was to make sure that we went to people who had the capital, who were able to do the bartering on behalf of the people of Barbados. Because at that time, many of you will recall, we often referred to this situation as being involved in a vaccine war. And therefore, we had to make sure that we put all of our resources out there, all of the people who could perhaps bring us these vaccines, to be able to make sure that we were ahead of the game. The fact of the matter is as well that, you know, they would like us as well to look at opening longer in terms of the hours that supermarkets and banks would open. Again, ill-conceived. Because, again, you have to look at all of the issues of industrial relations because of this situation that we now find ourselves in. And the fact of the matter is that on the economic side of things, the program that they have laid out for this country, again, does not collide with the reality of what average Barbadians are facing. They have spoken to us about the fact that there is a serious and economic and financial crisis for which tough economic decisions have to be made. But on the other hand, when we seek to implement tough decisions and to make things in the interest of the people of this country, they want now to abandon the BERT program, which has been able to give us a certain level of discipline in this country to be able to save funds to do the things that we need to do. And they instead want to promote a slew of giveaways just to capture the imagination of people, but not looking at the fiscal prudence that is required in order to get us through this particular pandemic. And I want to say to you tonight, because many of you have benefited from some of the programs that the Barbados Labour Party has engineered over the course of this pandemic. Whether it's been the household mitigation grant, we've introduced the trust loans, so that even in an environment where things are difficult, you have still had the opportunity, if you lost your work, your employment, or if you were thinking of even setting up a new business, you've had the opportunity to still be able to tap into resources available from the government of Barbados. We didn't say we are going through a pandemic, so basically nobody can get access to nothing. We didn't say that. For the people who had difficulty, even people who sold outside of schools, all the small business people were still able to access the grants to be able to sustain them. Was it enough to deal with what you may have lost? No. But the Barbados Labour Party understood that we still had to do something in order to hold people who could not conduct life as normal in a different Barbados. The Democratic Labour Party, in their manifesto, claims that the current surplus, the primary surplus target of 6% is way too onerous, and that a new Democratic Labour Party administration will reduce this to a 1.5% surplus. On the other hand, it says that it expects to achieve a debt anchor of 60% of GDP by 2035. This is impossible. And perhaps everybody doesn't understand always when we speak the economic language, but I want you to understand that the one thing that the Barbados Labour Party is not is reckless. The Barbados Labour Party understands that there is no way under God's green earth that Barbados can achieve an anchor of 60% of GDP with only a primary surplus of 1.5%. It is absolute nonsense. A primary surplus of 1.5 cannot be proposed or even achieved if you are intending to cut the sewage levy by 50%, as they are proposing, or to reduce the excise tax on fuel by up to 25 cents, as they have indicated, whatever the hell that means. They have said that they will abolish the tax on bank assets and that they're going to eliminate the foreign exchange levy. This is not fiscal prudence. This is fiscal madness, especially since there are no suggestions being put forward by the Democratic Labour Party administration as how the fall off in revenue that we are experiencing is going to be addressed. In simple terms, people of College Savannah and people who are listening tonight, we cannot allow ourselves to be placed in a situation again where none of you, even at this late juncture on the eve of an election, can identify who is going to be the economist in a Democratic Labour Party government. Because right now they are so divided between who is fighting for leadership in the Democratic Labour Party. It is not clear whether it is a young man running in the city. Is it going to be Eswick up in St. Philip? It is not clear, and you must realize that the same Eswick who is running again for the Democratic Labour Party was the same individual who was responsible for the infrastructure projects of the Democratic Labour Party. And I had the opportunity to sit in the opposition and listen to what y'all call the pit bull, the bulldog, or whatever, not be able to say anything as it related to economic projects that he was supposed to be responsible for, but that the then administration on many occasions refused to talk to him about. He was dumb. The pit bull had no bark under a Democratic Labour Party administration when we were in opposition. Many times he didn't come to Parliament. He didn't vote on things that affected ordinary Barbadians. He did not rise to the occasion, but now he wants to come on a platform and talk about all these infrastructure projects that the Democratic Labour Party did. How the Barbados Labour Party is off track. But where was he when his voice needed to be heard? When the mismanagement was taking place? When people in Barbados were crying out? When infrastructure in St. John was overlooked by the same administration? when the former representative for this constituency had to take to task the then Democratic Labour Party government for ignoring the people of St. John, not spending the money on the polyclinic, and in the end spending too much money on the polyclinic to get it finished, not completing the roads in this community that were required, and simply not getting the basic necessities of water to the people of these communities. But now you are going to hear out of the woodworks a voice coming telling you that the Barbados Labour Party economic policies are not working, that we have gone off track, and touting about all of their infrastructure projects as though the people of this country and this community in particular and this constituency have forgotten the neglect that was meted out to the people of this area. I say to you, the people of St. John must never forget. You must never forget where you have come from. And you must never forget the times when people, I remember driving through St. John and seeing people with the buckets of water going from standpipe to standpipe. The water trucks coming through the community and people running to trucks to be able to get water. All of them had water, so it didn't matter to them. But they want to tell us now about economic policies when we have been spending the last 3.5 years trying to fight up with international agencies to be able to access and to unlock funding, to be able to make sure that we can do all of the roof-to-reach programs and all of the infrastructural projects that we know the people of this country require in order to put us back on track. I want to say to you tonight that even as it relates to constituency councils, which I see that they are talking about again, you all know what the constituency councils were like in this constituency, just as they were in St. Michael, Southeast, the city, and elsewhere. It was an opportunity for people to dip into the government's resources. Political partisanship at its best. If you were not a Democratic Labour Party supporter, you did not have the opportunity to be part of a constituency council to represent people. And many who are masquerading now as so-called looking to be candidates in this election were part of that, supported that. Didn't care about the fact that ordinary people must have a say in what happens within their communities. Not that you remove Charles Gill as the representative, but what you do is you make sure that you have local people providing also another tier of representation to be able to work with the representative to make sure that the policies are carried out effectively. Because the one thing that you must understand is that politics has changed in this country. The days are long gone when people have come to expect that we are always going to be in everybody's house. But the demands of today's politicians are completely different from the days of the generations that went before. And we must accept that as well. I remember my father was in politics for years. My father never had to contend with social media and 6 different email accounts and trying to log on to Zoom. Nowadays, as politicians, it is a different landscape. And it's not an excuse, it is our reality. We are expected to be everywhere and to know everything. But we in the Barbados Labour Party understand that while we want to be everywhere and want to know everything, that we have a responsibility to bring people along as well. So it is not by chance that this Labour Party started the rubbing shoulders programs where we worked with ordinary people, talked with ordinary people to hear your concerns. It is not by chance that on coming to office, we had the Thorn Commission that looked at the people's assemblies to be able to give ordinary people a structure within which they can have a kind of form of local government, that they have the opportunity to also serve. That is not just about the 30 of us, but it is also about giving ordinary people an opportunity to have a say within their communities. You do it in branches. You do it in your advocacy all over social media. We believe that you must have an opportunity to be able to have a say. And it doesn't mean that you must always agree with the Barbados Labour Party, but it means that the ordinary person across our society must have that opportunity to be able to say how they feel about issues which are affecting them. The Democratic Labour Party wants to bring back constituency councils. They want to take away the ability of people who may not want to may not be supporters of them to have a say. People who may have a difference of opinion from having a say. And it is wrong. And I assure you that we have already put the work in through the Thorne Commission to make sure that the People's Assemblies can become a reality, to ensure that you have that opportunity to have a say within your community and to assist Charles within his endeavors as representative. The Democratic Labour Party wants to tell you about integrity in public life. But this is the biggest joke of all. Because when we talk about integrity, we came to public life in 2018, many of us, on the basis that people were tired of politicians not having integrity, of people not standing for things, of people being able to sell out themselves for $1 and not acting in the interest of the people of this country, not caring about what the regional people had to say, about what the international community had to say, and taking a position that integrity legislation, while important, they would tell you it was important, but they never did anything to make sure that the integrity in public life legislation became a reality. You would recall that the former Prime Minister who told you the other day at the last meeting that we lived a glorious life under the Democratic Labour Party administration, felt that that glorious life did not require his ministers to adhere to anything to do with integrity in public life. That Democratic Labour Party administration passed the anti-corruption legislation and allowed it to lay on the statute books unproclaimed. Listen to me good. They passed it, but they left it, and they passed it before the general election to trick the people into believing that they were doing something and they were standing for integrity in this country. But instead, it laid unproclaimed and inactive for over 8 years. These are the same people who are coming back and wanting to stand for office. These are the same people whose leader was in the Senate at the time when all of these shenanigans were going on and said nothing about what the Democratic Labour Party was doing. And because of trying to secure a position as leader of the party, does not have not just the balls, but the principles upon which to stand and to say that the people who are now coming back to put themselves forward to serve in public life should have no place at the table. It is unfortunate. And we in the Barbados Labour Party, all of us in the House, sign off on the bill. We brought it back. It was in the Senate, it was shot down, but in the House, it passed. But even irrespective of that not passing, I want to tell you that all of us signed off from as far back as Owen Arthur, may he rest in peace, signed off documents to prove what we came to public life with, so that our integrity must never be questioned. So people may not always like what we do or how we do it, but the one thing that we intend to leave public life with is our integrity, because that is all that we have. And when we came to public life, there was no big set of money that anybody could send up big contracts to give away. You all know this. Charles has fought for contracts for the people of this community. Whatever was available, he has fought to be able to get people assistance. But there's been nothing for Charles to take home. And that is the reality. He has been more focused, and Ian have been more focused on trying to make sure that water gets to the taps of the people of this community and to the people of these parishes that have not had proper running water for a number of years. That's what we have been focused on. So when they talk about integrity, you have to ask them their position in relation to integrity legislation, in relation to the discrediting of an entire nation over an entire decade, over the fact that Barbadians can now hold their head up high, not just here, but in the region and the rest of the world, Because people are watching and seeing the fact that our leadership and our management of not only the pandemic but the economic crisis is second to none under the leadership of Prime Minister Motley. I want to tell you tonight, the people of St. John, you are not voting just for Charles. You are also voting for the Barbados Labour Party to be able to manage this crisis. You are voting for the future of this country. You are voting against mismanagement of resources. You are voting to restore a Barbados Labour Party administration that has nothing but your best interests at heart. And when you talk about things like the economy, we spoke to this up front. But the Democratic Labour Party's focus on their ability to foster economic growth is to have better governance systems and make ministers respond to issues raised by the Auditor General. This is as pathetic as it is laughable. Do you understand that all of us are held to account every time that we meet in cabinet? We don't wait until an Auditor General report comes out to be scrambling to account to the people of this country. We understand our responsibility is greater to you than it has ever been in the history of any other administration. And that has been our commitment from day one to the people. The Democratic Labour Party talks now about fostering synergies with tourism and agriculture, as though they have suddenly collided with the fact that we must feed our people. But we must not only feed our people, but we must also sustain the agricultural sector and to make sure that the agricultural sector is able to feed our people and people who are coming to our shores. What is interesting, and I'm going to talk about this tonight, because when they touch on these things about now trying to make it seem as though they care about the agricultural sector, I came to the Ministry of Education and discovered a project called the Hope and the Duke Project. One project intended to be a project which would have been a school of agriculture, but when I checked the file, there was no information as to how this school was to function. There was no information as to how we were going to get our people to be able to transition from a position where they did not see agriculture as a serious sector or a serious form of employment. They also had the Duke Project, which was one from UE, which was supposed to look at the research in agriculture to allow our people to start to do research in the agricultural sector to look at how we could take our indigenous products and make them work for us, as opposed to the rest of the world using our indigenous products and trying to sell them back to us. They did not have any vision, any foresight for either of those two projects. There was nothing that was available to me as minister. The People's Republic of China gave us funding to be able to build out these two projects. And would you believe the Democratic Labour Party administration had no discussions between the Ministry of Education and the Ministry of Agriculture at the time? For the first time on coming to office, I have put together a task force to ensure that we have been able to now have discussions with the Ministry of Agriculture to make sure that the monies that the Chinese are going to be spending in Barbados over the next couple of months does not go in vain, but that we have a vision for agriculture that crosses across not only the education ministry, but also the agricultural sectors as well. Because we understand, as we make the transition to specialist schools, that we have to ensure that people treat to these sectors in a serious way. So people who are involved in agriculture must be able to grow up their children believing that they can have a future in agriculture as well. Just as we believe that people who are creative or people who are engaged in sporting disciplines must also come to believe that it is okay to pursue the careers in those areas. A Barbados Labour Party administration has had to carve out the division, because we are not about smoke and mirror tactics. We are not about just pronouncements and making you believe that things are going to happen in the constituency of St. John. We are about doing the things that we say we have come to office to do. Empower our people, create the pathways for people to progress, and to ensure that we leave people in a better position than how we found them. The Democratic Labour Party has also told you in their manifesto that they want to reduce the cost of ridership on public transportation, and that the proposal now is to implement a transfer system. But what the Democratic Labour Party does not tell you is that a transfer system is only going to increase the capital investment and the operational costs, which will have to be transferred to the commuters, to ordinary people using the buses, because you can't get it done any other way. They don't tell you that. Again, another pie in the sky proposal and policy from the Democratic Labour Party administration. The other thing that their manifesto is silent on, which again is critical to what you have to know in terms of voting in this election. How do we deal with climate change? The people of St. John are now not only the only ones who are affected by climate change. It's not the people only in the countryside. All of us, whether in low-lying areas, in the town areas, it does not matter anymore. The Barbados that we live in today is a radically different Barbados than our foreparents would have lived in. We have all the technology to be able to identify when things are changing and when we are going to get systems. But what we can never predict is the level of devastation that is going to come and to confront the people of this country. And you all recall the effects of Thomas, when Hurricane Thomas passed through Barbados. Many people didn't even get up to today. Many people have not had the repairs done to their properties. And we get it. But along came Hurricane Elsa. And just as we are in the process of being able to conduct a number of the repairs to a number of houses that were long overdue, we've now had to divert resources to make sure that people who have been displaced as a result of the systems were given the opportunity to be housed in accommodation. And I want to tell the people of St. John and wider Barbados, you know, everybody wants things to happen overnight. House blow down, you want the house tomorrow. The reality is that things do take time. And while it is that we must have a greater sense of urgency across our public service to make sure that services are delivered to people, whether it is welfare, whether it is housing, or any of the other social services, the reality is that things take time, and you have to work with us in order to be able to help us to deliver on those services. So everybody is not going to get the houses repaired all the same time. And everybody is not going to get all the things that they want all the same time. But what I ask you to do tonight and over the course of the next few days is to ask some serious questions in relation to what has been done. Because the true test is not what hasn't been done. The things that haven't been done can still be done. But what you have to ask yourself is, have we completed a number of the things that we said we would start? And given the crisis and the conditions, have we done the things in the crisis that would make life different for people who needed the intervention at that point in time? That is what you must vote on. That is what you must ask yourselves. The Democratic Labour Party has said to you as well that they are going to embark on a mains lane program, as if they are not responsible for why we are also in the position we are in these parishes. I want to tell them that the mains program never stopped. In fact, what we had to do as a government, with the help of Charles and Ian, is to make sure that we were more aggressive in accessing funding, international funding, through the European Investment Bank and CAF, to be able to ensure that the programs could not only continue, but that each of these programs to get access to this water for you was accelerated during the last 3.5 years. So we know everybody didn't get what they want yet, but we know that the cries of the people of St. John are a lot less than when we started. And you can see the work being done, the infrastructure being laid across the community. So for them to say that they are going to create this program as though this is no manna from heaven is a joke. Because it is already in process, it is already accelerated, it will continue. And as I said before, there is no issue in our cabinet And there has never been an issue in the cabinet as to resources that needed to be applied to the constituency of St. John or to St. Joseph or to St. Andrew. That has never been in question. The people of these communities have been good to us, and in turn, we will ensure that we are good to them. The Democratic Labour Party, and I'm not here tonight to talk about them alone, but to tell you that when you are making decisions, it is important that you understand what you are making decisions on. Because if you don't know what they are saying, and you are only going to the polls because you might be vexed with Charles, so you're not going to go to vote because you feel that Charles is going to win, that's not what this election is about. You need to know what people are saying they are going to do, and you need to know what the Barbados Labour Party has been doing so that you can weigh the two and make a decision as it relates to how you see the Barbados Labour Party being able to manage the crisis and to manage our economy. And the fact of the matter is that in many respects, the Democratic Labour Party has been found wanting. There's nothing new about what it is that they are proposing and that what they're putting on the table. Even when you look at in the area of energy, we talk a lot about having the homes created, the 10,000 homes for people, because we understand that we have a responsibility to make sure that people have accommodation. When people have housing, it is easier to breathe, especially when you live in densely populated communities and households. We always see the social conditions improving when people are able to breathe a little easier. So it's not a pipe dream to believe that we can build out housing accommodation for people in this country at all different walks of life. We understand that that is a necessity. It is part of your basic survival. That if we give you the help up, that you will then take it and run with it. That is the Barbados Labour Party way. That we must always leave you in a better position than what we found you in. And when we therefore talk about energy, the proposals that the Democratic Labour Party administration has been proposing, they lack an imagination, and they pale in comparison to what we have termed our Roof to Reach program. It does not lay out any target to achieving energy sufficiency or a roadmap as to how we are going to get there. We talk about making sure that our houses are also provided with the photovoltaics, that we start to use solar energy a lot more, that we look at making sure that we move towards a renewable energy environment so that we can cut down our fuel cost bills. But they say nothing of a liberalization of a current energy policy in the country. They don't talk about the improvement of any regulatory system, nor the proposed ownership structure for the industry as it is to grow. I say to you that if you are not having these conversations or asking these questions and asking the Democratic Labour Party what they have to say on these issues and how they are going to implement some of the things that they have said, then you are neglecting your responsibility as well as a people. Because it is not what we say on a Barbados Labour Party platform alone that must matter, but it is also all of you who have benefited from free education in this country. The responsibility is yours as well to question those who come to you in public life to represent you and to tell you what it is that they are going to do different from the Barbados Labour Party over the course of the last 3.5 years to make life better for Barbadians. I also want to talk to you about the National Insurance Scheme because, again, they have brought a manifesto which, again, presents a serious lack of understanding of the structural issues that are facing this scheme and what will be required going forward. It speaks of the hits which the scheme has had, but it doesn't offer any suggestions on how or even whether they will recapitalize the fund. And many of you know that the National Insurance Fund has to be recapitalized. Otherwise, as you grow older, you are not going to have the benefit of being able to access the benefits from the national insurance system. They don't address the serious issue of an aging, declining workforce and the problems that we have in relation to underpopulation. Y'all will recall the former Minister of Education talking about the fact that we needed to have more children. That's what we're talking about. They knew it then, but they didn't take any steps to ensure that we increase our population, that we increase the number of people who could be productive citizens, who could contribute to a national insurance scheme to be able to benefit you in your old age and to benefit me in my old age. They were not interested in that, but they come now and tell you all these things about the national insurance scheme, but don't tell you what it is that they propose as the solutions to what is confronting this country. Many of the proposals that they want to put forward, I say to you tonight, are dodgy. I say dodgy. They're not making any sense. And the fact of the matter is that you must now question what is being put on the table from the Democratic Labour Party administration. Many of the cost of living measures that they have put forward are also another hodgepodge set of measures being put forward towards you. Everybody knows that the country relies heavily on trade taxes to finance the economy. And yes, there needs to be solutions found to deal with the escalating international costs and prices. But a willy-nilly policy of reducing import duties on a wider range of selected goods, another set of misguided policies, without the proper study as to the revenue effects, will only cause more problems than it is intended to solve. That is then topped only by the nonsense on the reduction of the excise tax by up to 25 cents. And not even the shadow minister in the Democratic Labour Party for Commerce and Energy, Ryan Walters, could even get the opportunity to read it properly because he himself don't understand it. I say to you tonight, people of St. John and all those who are listening, you have a responsibility to ask the questions of the people who put themselves forward to you in public life. We need to create work and we need to create employment and investment opportunities for people, not new welfare payout programs that cause people to be reliant on the state. We cannot have another rollover of what came before where people are just given the welfare checks, but they are not helped to be able to move and to progress in society. That is not the Barbados Labour Party way. And if the one thing that we must do as a new government, we must make sure that we improve our welfare services so people feel as though the services are relevant to them. We all know the challenges that we've had with the welfare department. And Minister Ford, I know, has been trying her utmost best and the staff there. But there's still a lot of work to be done to make sure that services, especially our social services, are decentralized so that people in these communities don't have to come to town to see a welfare officer, but that they're able to have access to all of the services within their community. Because we understand that many times when you are in difficult positions, you want to be able to access resources quickly. And sometimes even the very bus fare to get to town becomes problematic in an environment where you're basically struggling to make ends meet. We get it. And we know that going forward, we have a responsibility and an even greater responsibility to make sure that these systems that we have put in place are able to work. I want to therefore say to you tonight that it is my pleasure to be part of a cabinet that I feel very strongly has been able to stay focused and to stay loyal to its people in terms of what we said to you in 2018. We remain committed as a government to the people. And I know that with the support from the people of St. John, I want all my family from near and far, all in Churchview, everywhere, to come out, Edgecliff, Venture, to come out and to support Charles in this next election. A vote for Charles is a vote for the continued representation and infrastructure and transformation that must happen in the constituency of St. John. And you can want no better advocate than what we have seen manifest itself over the course of the last 3.5 years in Charles Griffith. You can get no better level of representation. He has been feisty. He has been fearless. He has been on the front line. He asks questions when he don't know the answer. That is what you want. You don't want people who are cocky, people who are simply critical for the sake of being critical. You want people who care. And I can stand here tonight and say that I have watched him. He's older than me, but I have watched him because I've had a little bit more years in this than he has. And I have watched him grow from strength to strength over the course of the last few years. And I am proud to be associated with Charles and to know that the people of St. John are in good hands, not only for the last 3.5 years, but certainly once you elect him on the 19th of January. Give the Barbados Labour Party your support. Come out in your numbers and support us. Support Prime Minister Motley and the entire team and all the hard work. Come out in your red. Make sure that you are there on the front line, because we are ready, we are ready, we are ready to take back St. John. People of St. John, come out in your numbers. Do not stand home. I want to bless you. Good night, and God bless you all. Thank you.
Always at the end, things happen. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you very much for being here with us tonight. You have heard from speaker after speaker after speaker. You've heard from the Prime Minister. You've heard from Charles Griffith. You've heard from a number of our candidates, and you've heard from young people from across St. John. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm honored to say to you that we have come to you tonight on why we have, on the 19th of January, to be re-elected as the government of this country. But before we go, I have some announcements for you. Tomorrow night, we are going to be in Checker Hall. We're going to be in Crab Hall, St. Lucie. We're going to be in Kingsland, Christchurch. We're going to be in Haynesville, in St. James. And of course, this will all be streamed online on our Facebook, IG, and YouTube pages. I implore you that as you go on the 19th of January to the polls, that you continue to place behind the Barbados Labour Party, not just your support, but your ex. Place it squarely in the box next to the candidate of your constituency. And I assure you that on the night of the 19th of January 2022, you, along with the team Barbados Labour Party, will be celebrating in the name of Jesus our God. And as we move forward, we will place Barbados on a higher plateau. And as we move forward, we will continue to grow and grow and grow. Thank you very much. Get home safely, and God bless you.